You ever have that gut feeling in your stomach that something is just off? Like, nothing has actually happened yet, but your body knows before your brain does. That's where I was about 6 months ago. My girlfriend, Rachel, and I had been together for 3 years. She wasn't just my girlfriend, though. She was my best friend, my daily person, the first person I texted in the morning, and the last one I said goodnight to. We lived together in this small two-bedroom apartment that we'd made into a home. The walls were filled with pictures of vacations, Polaroids from nights out, and a ridiculous number of goofy selfies. For the most part, we were happy. At least I thought we were. But around the 3-year mark, things started to shift. Little things. She used to always sit on the couch next to me, curling her legs over my lap, scrolling through her phone while I played Xbox or watched a game. But lately, she'd sit on the other end. Or she'd sit in the bedroom while I was in the living room. She used to tell me everything, work drama, what her friends said, how she was feeling. But suddenly, she wasn't sharing as much. If I asked, she'd say, "Oh, it's nothing," or "just tired." At first, I thought maybe it was stress. Her job was demanding. I knew she'd been overwhelmed with deadlines. But the way she'd lock her phone screen when I walked by, that didn't sit right. One night, she was in the shower, and her phone lit up on the counter with a notification. I didn't mean to look. I swear I didn't. But when you're in a relationship and things feel off, your eyes go where your heart tells them. It was a message from someone saved as D. And it wasn't just any message. It was a heart emoji. My stomach dropped. I froze, staring at that phone like it was a bomb. My first instinct was to pick it up, open it, and start scrolling. But something in me stopped. I told myself I was being paranoid. I'd never had a reason to distrust Rachel before. Maybe D was her friend Danielle or Denise. Maybe I was being insecure. So I set the phone back down, face down like I never saw anything. But I couldn't shake it. That night, while she was sleeping next to me, breathing softly with her hand curled against my chest, I just stared at the ceiling. My mind kept replaying the image of that message. A heart. From D. I told myself I'd wait. Observe. Look for patterns. And oh, did I find them. She started going out more often after work. Drinks with co-workers. Girls' night. Traffic was bad, so I stayed at a cafe until it cleared up. Stuff that sounded harmless. Except it was happening 3-4 times a week. When she came home, she'd smell faintly of cologne. Not hers, not mine. A scent I couldn't place. She'd shower right away. And her phone? Always face down, always locked, always glued to her hand. I noticed other things too. Her laughter. You know how you can recognize someone's laugh anywhere? Hers had changed. There was this softness to it when she was on the phone, this playful tone that wasn't there when she talked to me anymore. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't want to be the paranoid boyfriend who accused his girlfriend of cheating just because she was busy. I wanted proof. One night, though, I almost broke. We were on the couch, and her phone buzzed. She grabbed it so fast you'd think it was about to explode. She smiled, typed something quickly, and turned the screen away. I asked casually, "Who's that?" She looked at me with this practiced calm and said, "Oh, just Danielle." My heart sank. Danielle. D. But instead of calling her out, I forced a smile. Cool. That night, I lay awake again, her back turned to me in bed. She was texting someone, whispering little giggles under her breath. I stared at the ceiling, feeling like I was slowly being erased from my own relationship. Then came the breaking point. 2 weeks later, she told me she had to work late on a Friday. I offered to bring her dinner, thinking maybe it'd be a nice surprise. She panicked, like visibly panicked. No, it's fine," she said quickly. "I'm going to be in and out of meetings all night. I'll just grab something there." That alone set alarms blaring in my head. But I nodded, kissed her cheek, and pretended everything was normal. But I didn't go home. I drove to her office. It was raining, the kind of steady drizzle that makes the city feel colder and lonelier. I parked across the street from her building and waited. The lights in her office were off. The parking lot was empty. She wasn't there. I sat in my car for over an hour, staring at that dark building, the wipers squeaking across the windshield. I kept thinking maybe I misunderstood. Maybe she was at a different office. Maybe she wouldn't grab food first. But then I saw her, not coming from the office, but from down the street. She was walking under an umbrella with someone. A guy, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat. They were close, too close. Her hand brushed his arm, and she laughed that same soft laugh I'd been hearing. And then she kissed him, right there, on the sidewalk. I don't even remember breathing. I just sat frozen in my car, watching the girl I thought was my forever kiss someone else like I didn't exist. My chest felt hollow, my hands shaking against the steering wheel. I wanted to storm out, scream, cause a scene. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I drove home in silence. The rain blurred the streetlights into streaks of gold and red, and my tears blurred everything else. When she came home hours later, she smelled like his cologne. She smiled at me, kissed my cheek, and said, "Sorry I'm late." I smiled back and said nothing, but inside, I was breaking, and I knew this was only the beginning. After that long, painful dinner, I barely slept. My brain wouldn't stop spinning. I could still hear his voice in my head, steady and unwavering, as he admitted that his heart had been divided, like my marriage had been some sort of math problem. He got to choose which side of the equation he wanted to put his love on, and I was the one who ended up in the negative. I woke up early, staring at the ceiling for what felt like hours before I finally dragged myself into the kitchen. The house was too quiet. It used to feel warm in the mornings. I'd make coffee, he'd shuffle in half asleep and hug me from behind, and we'd stand there in our little bubble of routine. But now, silence. The kind of silence that weighs on you, pressing into your chest until you feel suffocated. He hadn't come home last night. He texted me once around midnight. "I'm staying at my brother's. Need some space." My phone sat face down on the counter like a grenade. I was too scared to pick up. I sat there for hours, sipping on cold coffee, watching the sun rise until my phone buzzed again. It wasn't him. It was my mom. "Morning, sweetheart. Haven't heard from you. Everything okay?" I stared at her message for a long time, my thumbs hovering over the keyboard. Do I tell her the truth? Do I say, "Hey, Mom, my husband of 12 years just told me he's in love with someone else"? I didn't. Instead, I lied. Yet just a little tired. Long week. Because how do you explain something like this? How do you explain betrayal without feeling like you're exposing yourself as some kind of fool? By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. The stillness of the house, the unanswered questions, the ache in my chest that wouldn't quit. I called him. He answered on the second ring. "Hey," he said, his voice soft, almost guilty. "Where are you?" I asked. "Still at my brother's." I needed to think. Think about what? I snapped. "You already told me everything last night." There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing. "I didn't tell you everything," he finally said. My stomach twisted. My hands went cold. What else is there? "She's pregnant." That single sentence knocked the air out of me. Pregnant. My ears rang. My chest went tight. I felt like I was falling, tumbling into a hole I couldn't climb out of. I don't even remember hanging up. I just remember the sound of my own sobs, loud and raw, echoing in the empty kitchen. I collapsed on the floor, clutching my chest, trying to breathe. How could this be real? How could he do this to me? Hours passed in a blur. I didn't eat. I didn't move. At some point, my best friend, Emily, called. I hadn't told her anything yet, but she could hear it in my voice the second I answered. "What happened?" she asked softly. And I broke. I told her everything, from the dinner to the confession, to the word that was now seared into my brain. Pregnant. Emily didn't gasp. She didn't say she was shocked. She just listened. When I was done, she said the thing I didn't want to hear. "You need to leave him." "I can't." I whisper, my throat raw. "Yes, you can. You deserve better than this." He didn't just make a mistake. He built an entire life with someone else while standing in yours. Her words stung because they were true. But the thought of leaving him, of letting go of the only person I had built my life around for over a decade, felt impossible. That night, he came home. I heard his keys in the lock and my whole body froze. When he walked in, he didn't look like the man I married. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes red, his face pale. "We need to talk," he said quietly. I just sat there on the couch, staring at him. "She didn't mean to get pregnant," he started. I laughed. A bitter, sharp laugh that didn't sound like me. "Nobody means to cheat either, but here we are." He flinched but kept going. "She wants to keep it, and I don't know what to do." "What do you mean you don't know what to do?" I shot back. "You already made your choice. You chose her when you slept with her. You chose her when you lied to me. You chose her when you looked me in the eyes for months and pretended everything was fine. He sat down across from me, his hands trembling. I didn't stop loving you, I swear, but I made a mistake, and now. A mistake doesn't last this long, I interrupted. A mistake doesn't end up with a baby on the way. Tears filled his eyes, but I felt nothing. Or maybe I felt too much to register it all. I was exhausted, numb, hollow. What do you want from me? I finally asked. I don't want to lose you, he whispered. That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Because he already lost me. He just didn't realize it yet. The next morning, I packed a bag. Just one. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. Every corner of it felt like a lie. Every memory tainted. I drove. For hours. No destination. Just the road stretching out in front of me. The further I got, the lighter I felt. Not healed, not okay, but lighter. Like maybe, just maybe, there was a version of me waiting somewhere down the road who wasn't defined by his betrayal. When I finally stopped, I was 3 towns over, parked at some rundown motel with a flickering neon sign. I checked in, dropped my bag on the bed, and stared at the cracked ceiling. For the first time in 12 years, I was completely alone, and I didn't know if that terrified me or saved me. When I left my parents' house that night, I drove aimlessly for a while. The lights of the city blurred past me, but I wasn't really seeing anything. My head was pounding, my chest tight, and I kept replaying the dinner conversation over and over again. I had gone there hoping, maybe foolishly, that time and distance had softened their stance. I wanted them to say something like, "We're sorry for how we acted. We want to try again." But instead, it was the same coldness, the same dismissiveness, as if I were some stranger who had stumbled into their home instead of their own son. I pulled over at a quiet parking lot near a park. It was late. Most of the city was asleep, but I sat there with the engine off, staring at my steering wheel. For the first time in a long while, I felt the old heaviness I used to carry in my 20s. That weight of not belonging anywhere. And I hated that they still had that power over me. I had built a life, hadn't I? A steady career, a group of friends who cared about me, even a partner who loved me deeply. I had proof that I could exist without them. Yet, just one evening back in that suffocating house, and suddenly I was 17 again, begging for crumbs of affection. The next morning, Emily noticed immediately that something was wrong. She didn't push it first. She just made coffee, sat next to me, and placed her hand on mine. That simple gesture grounded me. Eventually, I told her about the dinner, about the way my mother corrected every little thing I said, the way my father looked at me like I was nothing more than a mild disappointment he had long accepted. Emily listened quietly, then asked, "Why do you keep putting yourself through this?" That question stuck with me, because I didn't have a clear answer. Was it loyalty? Hope? A refusal to admit that they were never going to change? A few days later, I was at work when I got a text from my younger sister, Megan. Heard about dinner. You okay? Megan was the only one in my family I still had some real connection with. She was 5 years younger, and I had basically helped raise her when we were kids because my parents were so checked out. She'd always been able to see the way they treated me, and she never sugarcoated it. I replied, "Same as always." I don't know why I thought it'd be different. She texted back almost instantly, "Because you want a mom and dad. And I'm sorry, but they're not capable of being that for you." That hit me hard. It was blunt, but it was also the truth I'd been avoiding. Later that week, Megan called me. She told me that after I left dinner, my mom had gone on a rant about me being too sensitive and always playing the victim. She said Dad had nodded along, muttering that I was just wasting my life. Hearing it secondhand was even worse than hearing it directly. At least when I'm in the room, I can push back or leave. But knowing they talk about me like that when I'm not there, it broke something inside me. That night, Emily sat me down and asked if I wanted to keep trying with them. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I thought about the last 2 decades. About birthdays where they barely acknowledged me. Holidays where I was always the one traveling to them, never the other way around. The phone calls that only happened when they needed something, never just to check in. The truth was my relationship with my parents had always been one-sided. I was the one reaching, hoping, waiting. They were just indifferent. And yet, Some part of me still longed for their approval, still ached for one moment of real recognition. But I was starting to realize something. Maybe that longing would never be satisfied. Maybe I had to find peace without it. Megan and I met for lunch a few days later, just the two of us. She told me she was thinking of moving across the country for a new job. My first instinct was sadness. She was my one ally in the family. But then I realized I couldn't blame her. She was tired too. Tired of being dismissed, of carrying the weight of parents who never gave back. Don't let them break you the way they've broken me, I told her. She shook her head. You're not broken. You just still care. And that's not a weakness. Her words stayed with me. That weekend, Emily suggested we take a short trip out of the city. Just a couple of days away, somewhere quiet. We drove to a small cabin near the mountains, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. There were no reminders of my parents, no buzzing phone with Megan's updates, no old wounds being reopened. Just me, Emily, and the stillness of nature. One night, as we sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, Emily turned to me and said, I know it hurts, but you have to ask yourself, are you going to let them define the rest of your life? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I listened to the sound of the wind through the trees. Because deep down, I knew she was right. When we got back home, I made a decision. I wasn't going to cut my parents off completely, at least not yet. But I was done chasing them. I wouldn't keep showing up to dinners where I was belittled. I wouldn't keep calling just to be ignored. If they wanted a relationship, they could reach out. It felt terrifying, but also strangely freeing. Megan supported me. She said, it's about time you stopped bleeding yourself dry for people who never notice. The next few weeks were quiet. My parents didn't call, of course. They didn't ask where I was. They didn't notice that I had pulled back. And as painful as that realization was, it also confirmed what I'd suspected. I had been holding up this entire relationship on my own. For the first time, I wondered, what would happen if I let it go completely? I didn't go back home that night. Instead, I crashed on my friend Danny's couch. He didn't ask a lot of questions at first. Just handed me a blanket and a pillow, and we sat in silence, the TV playing some late-night rerun neither of us was really watching. My mind kept replaying every single word from the fight, her face when she said it, the way my own voice cracked when I begged her to just tell me the truth. But what gnawed at me more than the betrayal itself was how quickly she made me feel like I was the crazy one. That look of annoyance she gave, the sigh, like I was a burden for wanting honesty. That hurt more than the idea of her actually being with someone else. Lying there on Danny's couch, staring at the ceiling, I kept thinking about the smaller moments. The ones that didn't seem important at the time, but now felt like puzzle pieces I hadn't put together. Like the way she'd suddenly taken her phone with her every time she left the room. Or how she'd laugh at something, then immediately silence her screen when I asked what was so funny. At around 3 a.m, I sat up and texted her, I won't come home until you're ready to tell me the truth. But if you don't, then I'll take your silence as the answer. I didn't get a reply. The next day at work, I was useless. My boss noticed, but I brushed it off with the classic. Didn't sleep much, just tired. But the truth was, my mind was running circles around itself. Do I confront her again? Do I dig through her phone? Do I call her family? Do I just walk away? By lunch, Danny texted me. She came by looking for you. Said she wanted to talk. That sent my stomach into knots. I didn't even know if I was ready to hear what she had to say. But part of me couldn't ignore it either. After work, I drove back to Danny's, and sure enough, she was sitting in her car parked outside. She looked exhausted, hair tied up, eyes swollen like she'd been crying all day. When I pulled up, she got out immediately, almost running toward me. Please, she said before I could even speak. Please just listen. Don't shut me out. I leaned against my car, arms crossed, heart pounding. Then tell me the truth. No more half answers. No more dodging. Just the truth. Her lip trembled. She looked down at the ground, then back up at me. And for a second, I thought she might actually tell me everything. I messed up, she whispered. I froze. Those 3 words confirmed everything I was afraid of, but also felt like relief, like I wasn't crazy, like my instincts had been right. What do you mean messed up? I pushed. You don't just mess up. Be specific. Tears welled in her eyes, and she shook her head. I don't want to lose you. Please, if I tell you, you'll hate me forever. I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. You don't get to decide that. I already hate what's happening now, where you won't even give me the respect of honesty. She sobbed, covered her face with her hands, then finally said it. It was just once. Those words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Just once? With who? I demanded, my voice breaking. She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. She wasn't protecting me. She was protecting him. You can't even say his name, I said, shaking my head. Unbelievable. It didn't mean anything, she cried. It was stupid. I was drunk. I regretted it the second it happened. I cut her off, shouting, "Don't give me that cliché excuse." Do you think that makes it better? That it being just once erases the betrayal? That it was meaningless makes it less disgusting? She reached for me, but I stepped back. "I love you," she pleaded. "I swear to God, it meant nothing compared to us. I can't lose you over a mistake." I felt like my legs could barely hold me up. My throat was tight, my vision blurry. I wanted to scream, cry, hit something, anything to make the pain less suffocating. "You already lost me," I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. She broke down, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe, begging me not to give up on us. But all I could think about was every moment we'd shared, every laugh, every plan for the future, now tainted with this ugly truth. That night, I didn't go inside with her. I told her I needed space, real space. She begged to follow me back to Danny's, but I refused. Watching her drive away was one of the hardest things I've ever done, because even in that moment, even through the rage and heartbreak, I still loved her. And that was the cruelest part of it all. Over the next week, the text didn't stop. Long paragraphs about how sorry she was, about how she'd do anything to fix it, how we could go to therapy, how she'd prove to me she could be trusted again. But every time I tried to imagine taking her back, my mind played the same reel, her with him, whoever he was. Her choosing to betray me. Her covering it up and letting me twist myself into knots, doubting my own sanity. Danny kept telling me I needed to make a decision. "You can't live in limbo forever," he said. "Either you forgive her and try again, or you walk away. But dragging it out like this is just bleeding you dry." He was right, but making that decision felt impossible. Because both choices came with pain. Staying meant swallowing the betrayal, and leaving meant letting go of the love I thought would last forever. A few nights later, she showed up again. No warning this time, just knocked on Danny's door until I answered. She was holding a box. "What's that?" I asked. "My phone," she said, handing it to me. "Everything's unlocked. Check it, go through it, whatever you want. I have nothing to hide anymore. Please, just give me a chance." I stared at the box, then at her. She looked broken, raw, stripped down to desperation. Part of me wanted to take the phone, dig through every message, every photo, every hidden folder until I found the proof of who it was. But another part of me was exhausted, tired of chasing answers that wouldn't make me feel any better. "I don't need your phone," I said finally, "because I already know the only thing I needed to know, that you didn't respect us enough to say no when it mattered." She broke down again, clinging to me, begging. And for the first time, I didn't cry with her. I just felt empty. That night, lying back on the couch, I realized something. Sometimes the worst heartbreak isn't losing someone. It's realizing they were never who you thought they were in the first place. And maybe the real question I had to ask myself wasn't whether she deserved another chance, but whether I deserved to live with this kind of pain for the rest of my life. I don't even know how to begin this part without sounding like I'm dragging my heart across broken glass again. But the truth is, by the time the wedding was only weeks away, I was drowning in emotions I couldn't share with anyone. On the outside, I was still the dutiful brother, the calm best man, the guy who could joke about ties being the wrong shade of navy blue. Inside, though, I was unraveling at the seams. Every night, I kept replaying the same thought. What if I told her the truth? What if I just stood in front of her, before vows, before rings, before promises sealed forever, and said everything I'd been holding in for years? That I loved her. That I had loved her long before my brother even knew her name. That I wasn't just the supportive best man. I was the man who'd been breaking silently behind smiles and inside jokes, pretending every glance didn't mean more than it should. But how could I? How could I drop a bomb like that when the whole family had already pinned me as the level-headed one, the dependable one, the one who would never cause drama? And worse, how could I do it to my brother? The guy who trusted me enough to ask me to be the one standing right next to him when he said I do. Still, temptation dug into me like splinters under skin. And it wasn't just because I wanted her. It was because, piece by piece, I realized she might still feel something too. It started with little things. Like when she called me one night about the playlist for the wedding reception. She could have easily sent a text, but instead she talked to me for nearly an hour. And it wasn't just about songs. It was about her fears. She admitted she was scared about the marriage, about moving away after, about whether she was making the right decision. Her voice cracked at one point when she said, "Sometimes I feel like I'm standing at the edge of something so big, but I don't know if I'm ready to jump." I swallowed my words so hard they burned in my chest. I wanted to say, "Then don't jump with him. Jump with me instead." But all I managed was, "You're stronger than you think. You'll figure it out." She sighed, a mix of comfort and exhaustion. "You always know what to say. Sometimes I wonder what I'd do without you." And it hurt. God, it hurt. Because part of me believed she meant it in a way she didn't dare admit. The night before the wedding, there was a rehearsal dinner. Everyone was buzzing with excitement, clinking glasses, laughing too loud, hugging too hard. I was at the edge of it all, floating in the middle of conversations that blurred together. And then she found me outside. The air was cool, and she stood at her dress with her hair falling over her shoulder, holding her glass like she was clinging to it for balance. "You're quiet," she said softly. I shrugged, just thinking. She tilted her head. "About tomorrow?" I hesitated. "Yeah, about everything, really." She stepped closer. "I don't know why, but I feel like I need you there tomorrow more than anyone else." Her words felt like lightning under my skin. She didn't know what she was doing to me. Or maybe she did. Maybe she was just as conflicted, just as tangled in this mess as I was. For a moment, I let myself look at her. Not the bride-to-be, not my brother's fiancée. Just her, the woman I had loved in silence for years. And in her eyes, I saw something flicker. Something that almost made me believe I wasn't imagining it. The wedding day came. I woke up feeling like my chest had been packed with stones. Every step felt heavy, every smile forced. My brother was buzzing, pacing around the room, adjusting his cufflinks for the 10th time. "Man, can you believe this? It's really happening," he said, grinning like a kid. I forced a laugh. "Yeah, big day." He clapped me on the back. "Couldn't have done any of this without you. You're the best, you know that." My throat tightened. He had no idea that the best man was also the worst liar, standing next to him while holding a secret that could shatter everything. Then came the ceremony. The music swelled, the doors opened, and she walked down the aisle in white. And my world stopped. She looked radiant, but not just in the way everyone else saw. To me, it was personal, it was everything. She wasn't just a bride. She was her. The girl who had been my best friend, my late-night phone call, my laughter in the dark. The girl who made me feel like home wasn't a place, but a person. I clapped when everyone clapped. I smiled when everyone smiled. But inside, I was falling apart. When they exchanged vows, her voice shook just enough for me to notice. And for a split second, when her eyes flicked toward me, just barely, I wondered if she was thinking the same thing I was. That it should have been me. The reception blurred together. Dances, speeches, laughter, music. And then came my speech. I had written something safe, something generic. But standing there, holding the microphone, looking at her in her white dress and him with his hand over hers, I couldn't bring myself to read it. Instead, I spoke from the heart. I talked about my brother, how he was always the bold one, the reckless one, the one who went after what he wanted without hesitation. And I said how I admired him for it, because some of us spend too much time overthinking, too much time holding back. And then, without meaning to, I looked at her, and I said, if there's one thing I've learned from watching these two, it's that love is about courage. It's about choosing, even when it's terrifying. And I hope they never forget that. Her eyes shimmered, and I knew she understood. She understood more than I ever wanted her to. The night ended with music and laughter, but I slipped outside when no one was watching. I couldn't breathe in there anymore. And then she followed me. For a long moment, we just stood under the string lights, the faint sound of music drifting from inside. "You were amazing up there," she whispered. I swallowed. "Yeah, thanks." She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. I almost couldn't go through with it. My chest clenched. "What do you mean?" She looked down, then back at me, and her voice cracked. "Because part of me kept thinking about you." My heart stopped. She shouldn't have said it. I shouldn't have wanted to hear it. But in that moment, every wall I had built came crashing down. I stepped closer. Don't say that unless you mean it." Her breath shook. "I mean it." And then, before I could stop myself, I kissed her. It wasn't long. It wasn't dramatic. It was desperate. A lifetime of unsaid words crammed into a single moment. And when she pulled back, tears were running down her face. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I can't hurt him. I can't ruin this. But God, I needed you to know." And then she turned and walked back inside, leaving me standing there under the lights, broken open in a way I'd never been before. I never told anyone about that moment. Not my brother, not my family. It became a secret carved into my chest, a wound that would never fully close. Because the truth is, I got what I wanted. For just a second, I knew she had loved me too. But the cost was unbearable. I had to watch her live a life with my brother, smiling in photos, raising toasts at family dinners, building memories that should have been mine. And I had to keep pretending year after year that I was just the best man, when really I was the man who lost everything by staying silent too long. Sometimes late at night, I think about that kiss, about the way her hand trembled when she touched my face, about the way her voice cracked when she said she thought about me. And I wonder if maybe in some parallel universe, we chose differently. Maybe in another life, I was brave enough to speak sooner. Maybe in another life, she walked down the aisle to me. But not in this one. In this one, I will always be the best man and never the groom. If this story broke your heart the way it broke mine to tell, then stay. Subscribe. There are more stories waiting for you here. Stories that will make you feel, stories that might just remind you of the things you've lived through too. Don't miss them. Stay with me. When my father died, I thought the hardest part would be losing him. I was wrong. Grief has a way of blurring time. The funeral passed in a haze of faces, flowers, and awkward condolences from people I barely knew. Some meant well, others were just there to be seen, and a few, well, they were already whispering about the estate before the burial dirt had even settled. My father, Richard Carter, wasn't a billionaire tycoon, but he was comfortable. He built his wealth over decades. Real estate, some wise investments, and an iron discipline that made him the kind of man people respected but didn't always love. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't warm either. He believed in hard work, responsibility, and legacy. Legacy, that was his obsession. He'd tell us, his 3 children, over and over again, "One day, everything I've built will be yours. But you better prove you deserve it." I used to think it was just words, a stern father's way of pushing us. But the day of the will reading proved otherwise. It happened in his study, dark with shelves, leather chairs, his faint cologne still lingering. The lawyer, Mr. Grant, an old family friend with a stiff posture and cold spectacles, called us together. My siblings, Evelyn, the eldest of 39, a sharp-tongued perfectionist who thought she deserved everything by birthright, and Daniel, the middle child, 36, a charming but reckless dreamer who had burned through more business ventures than I could count. Then me, the youngest, 32, always the quiet one, the peacekeeper, the one Dad never really seemed to believe could take charge. Mom had passed away years earlier, so it was just us now. The air felt heavy. Evelyn sat ramrod straight, her jaw tight. Daniel lounged like he didn't have a care in the world, twirling a pen between his fingers. I sat somewhere between them, my stomach churning. Mr. Grant cleared his throat and opened the envelope. Richard Carter's last will and testament. I swear the room stopped breathing. It started out normal enough. Some charitable donations, a few sentimental items distributed among relatives and old friends. Then came the big part, the estate, the properties, the money. And that's when everything changed. To my children, Evelyn, Daniel, and Michael, Grant read, his voice even. I leave my estate not equally, but conditionally. My heart sank. Condition? Evelyn's lips twitched into a smirk. She probably thought she'd get the lion's share. Grant continued, my assets, valued at approximately $22 million, shall be placed in trust. The inheritance will not be divided until 1 year from the date of my death. During that year, my children must live together in my home, manage the family businesses jointly, and demonstrate the ability to cooperate, to protect, and to build upon what I leave behind. At the end of that year, the inheritance will be divided according to my instructions, contingent upon their conduct. The silence was deafening. Live together? A whole year? In Dad's massive but suffocating estate? Evelyn looked horrified. Daniel's smirk faded. I felt my stomach twist tighter. Grant wasn't finished. If any of the three fails to uphold their responsibilities, financial, personal, or moral, they forfeit their claim. The forfeited portion will be split among the remaining siblings. Should more than one fail, the remaining inheritor will take all. I could actually hear Evelyn's breath hitch. 1 year, one house, millions on the line, and a father's final test from beyond the grave. It was like he had set us up for war. Is this a joke? Evelyn snapped, breaking the silence. My father wouldn't do something so ridiculous. We're adults. We have our own lives, our own families. Grant adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Carter, your father was very clear. He believed legacy was more than money. He wanted to ensure cooperation among his children. He feared division would destroy the family. Daniel chuckled bitterly. Cooperation? With her? I'd rather set myself on fire. Evelyn shot him a glare sharp enough to cut glass. At least I've worked for something in my life. You just leeched off everyone else's. And you've done what, exactly? Daniel fired back. Bossed everyone around. Acted like you're queen of the universe. Dad probably set this up because he knew you'd strangle us with your control freak nonsense. I raised my hands. Enough. This isn't the place. But they ignored me, as always. The lawyer let the argument simmer, then cleared his throat again. There is one more detail. At the end of the year, the division will not be equal. Richard Carter instructed that the child who proves themselves most capable of leadership will receive half. The other half will be divided between the remaining two. My jaw dropped. So not only were we forced to live together and cooperate for a year, but at the end of it, only one of us would get the majority. Dad hadn't set us up for cooperation. He'd set us up for competition. Suddenly, the study felt colder. Evelyn's smirk returned, thin and poisonous. Daniel's eyes lit up, like he'd just been handed the chance of a lifetime. I sat frozen, realizing that this was more than an inheritance. It was a battle, and I wasn't sure I wanted to fight. But something deep inside me whispered that I might not have a choice. I thought maybe after the first blow-up at the lawyer's office, things would calm down. You'd think family members who shared holiday dinners, who celebrated birthdays together, and who cried together when Grandpa passed away would eventually take a step back and remember that we were blood. But instead, it felt like we were turning into strangers. No, worse than strangers. Strangers don't know how to hurt you. Family does. It started the very next week. I got a call from my mom. Early morning, her voice already sharp. Did you hear what your uncle said? He's been telling people at church that your dad manipulated Grandpa into signing the will when he was sick. My stomach dropped. Manipulated? My dad? The man who spent every single day at the hospital when Grandpa's health started to decline? The man who barely slept, running errands, making sure Grandpa got the best care? Mom, that's ridiculous, I said, pacing the kitchen floor. You know that's not true. Of course it's not true, she snapped. But people are already talking. The last thing your father needs is to be accused of tricking his own father. The rage that bubbled inside me wasn't just about the rumor. It was about who spread it. Uncle Robert had always been, well, dramatic. If something didn't go his way, he made sure the entire world knew about it. But accusing my dad of manipulating his dying father? That wasn't just dramatic. That was cruel. By the weekend, things got worse. We were all supposed to meet again, this time at Grandpa's house to sort out some personal items before the estate sale. The house still smelled like Grandpa. like pipe tobacco and the faint hint of Old Spice he wore religiously. Walking in, I felt my throat tighten. It wasn't just a house. It was a museum of memories. The creaky floorboards where Grandpa used to chase us with tickle attacks. The worn-down recliner where he'd watch baseball, shouting at the TV as if the players could hear him. But as soon as we gathered in the living room, the atmosphere turned sour. Uncle Robert stood near the mantel, arms crossed, lips curled like he was preparing for battle. Aunt Linda sat on the couch, her expression already sour. My dad kept his hands clasped tight, like he was trying to control his temper. "Before we go through anything," Robert started, his voice booming, "I want to address something. That will isn't right. It's not fair. Dad wasn't in his right mind when he signed it, and you know it." My dad's jaw clenched. "Robert, we already went through this with a lawyer. Dad was fully competent. The will is legal, and you know it. What you're doing right now, it's just stirring the pot." "Stirring the pot?" Robert scoffed. "I'm trying to protect what's rightfully mine." That was it. The word mine. It stabbed through the air like a knife. That was the core of it, wasn't it? This wasn't about fairness or memories. It was about money, about property, about who got the bigger slice of the pie. But then Aunt Linda chimed in, her voice dripping with venom. "Of course you defend it, John. You've always been Dad's favorite. He handed everything to you. The rest of us were just background noise." I couldn't stop myself. "That's not true, Aunt Linda. Grandpa loved all of us." She turned her gaze on me, sharp and cold. "Don't talk to me like you know, child. You weren't here when you were growing up. You didn't see the way he treated us compared to your father. You just saw the sweet grandpa version. That hit me harder than I expected, because in a way she was right. I only knew Grandpa as the doting old man who slipped me candy and told me stories about his childhood. I didn't know what he was like when he was younger. But even if he had favorites, did that mean he deserved to be slandered now? The fight escalated. Voices got louder. Tears started flowing. At one point, Robert slammed his fist on the table so hard a picture frame rattled off the shelf. And then silence, because my dad did something I never thought I'd see. He grabbed Grandpa's old Bible off the mantel and slammed it on the coffee table. "Enough." His voice boomed through the room. His hands shook, but his eyes were steady. "You want to fight about money? Fine. You want to question the will? Fine. But don't you dare stand in this house, his house, and tear his memory apart. This isn't about you. This is about honoring Dad. If you can't do that, you have no business being here." The silence stretched. No one knew what to say. Finally, Robert muttered, "You think you can guilt us in his silence? Not going to happen." He turned and stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Aunt Linda followed, muttering under her breath. And just like that, it was just me, Mom, and Dad sitting in Grandpa's living room, the echo of slammed doors ringing in our ears. Mom rubbed her temples, whispering, "This is going to destroy us." I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wanted to tell her families fight, but they get over it. But deep down, I wasn't sure. Because the way Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda looked at us, that wasn't just anger. That was hate. But it didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, things spiraled further. My cousin started posting cryptic things on social media. One of them wrote, "Some people will do anything for money, even betray family." Another one commented, "Funny how some people always end up with the biggest piece of the pie." It didn't take a genius to know who they were talking about. And then came the phone calls. Random hang-ups at 2 a.m. anonymous voicemails saying things like, "Hope you enjoy stealing from your family." It was surreal. This was my family. These were people who once sent me Christmas cards, who hugged me at weddings. And now they were treating us like enemies. The final straw came during the estate sale. We had agreed, at least that was the plan, that the money from the sale would be split evenly among the siblings. Simple. Fair. But when the day came, Robert showed up with his lawyer. Not just a lawyer, a full-on aggressive, suit and tie, briefcase in hand type. "I'm here to make sure everything is documented," Robert said with a smug smile. My dad almost lost it. "Are you serious right now? This is a yard sale, not a courtroom." But Robert didn't care. Every item that left the house, every piece of furniture, every plate and spoon, he wanted it written down, signed, sealed. By the end of the day, Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years. His shoulders slumped, his face pale. On the drive home, he didn't say a word. Not one word. That night, I heard him crying in the garage. My dad, my rock, the man who never showed weakness, sitting in the dark crying. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just a fight over money. This was a war. A war that could leave scars we'd never recover from. And deep down, I started to wonder, how far would they go? The weeks following Dad's while reading were some of the most exhausting of my life. Not because of long hours at work or anything external, but because I was living in what felt like a pressure cooker at home. Every phone call, every knock on the door, every family group text felt loaded, like the fuse of some bigger explosion was about to ignite. Mom and I tried to keep things steady. She was quiet most of the time, still processing not only Dad's death, but also the complicated fallout his decision had caused. At first, I thought maybe she was relieved he'd left the house to me. She'd hinted before that she wanted me to be secure and have a home of my own. But as the days went on, I realized it wasn't that simple. She wasn't exactly siding with me, but she also wasn't siding with Evan or Julia. She was stuck in this limbo, like a referee who'd rather leave the field than blow the whistle. Evan, on the other hand, was relentless. He called daily, sometimes more than once. At first, it was passive-aggressive jabs. You know, it's kind of unfair, right? I mean, Dad always told me he'd make things even. Guess he just forgot. Then it escalated into thinly veiled threats. Lawyers don't come cheap, but neither does a house like that. You really think you can keep it without a fight? We both know I've got just as much right to it. Julia wasn't as loud, but she was no less manipulative. She sent long, guilt-laden texts, reminding me of childhood moments when she took care of me, or let me have the bigger slice of cake. She'd say things like, "I gave up a lot for this family. Don't you think I deserve a piece of what's left?" It was as if they were both rewriting history, pulling whatever strings they could find to make me crack. One night, I sat in the living room staring at Dad's old armchair. It was the one he always sat in during evenings, sipping tea, flipping through newspapers, half watching baseball on TV. That chair still smelled faintly of his cologne, and I couldn't bring myself to move it. As I sat there, I remembered conversations I'd had with him. Quiet ones where he'd say, "You've always been the one who listens. The one who takes care of people without making a show of it. I trust you'll know what to do when the time comes." And yet, I felt like I didn't know what to do. Every fiber of me wanted to keep the house. Not just because it was a physical inheritance, but because it was Dad. His memories, his life, his spirit felt woven into every wall and every corner. But at the same time, I didn't want to lose my siblings entirely. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon. Evan showed up at the house unannounced. He barged in, his face red, his jaw tight. Julia trailed behind him, not looking at me directly. "We need to talk," Evan said, slamming the door shut. I braced myself. What's there to talk about? Dad's will was clear, I said, keeping my voice steady. "That will is wrong," Evan shot back. "He wasn't in his right mind. You manipulated him. You were always around, always whispering in his ear while the rest of us were busy with our own lives. Admit it, you push him into this." Julia finally spoke up, her voice softer but no less cutting. "We're not saying you don't deserve something, but the whole house? Come on, that's not fair. Dad loved all of us. He wouldn't want this family ripped apart." The accusation hit me like a brick. Manipulate Dad? Me? Of all the people, I'd been the one who stayed quiet, who never asked for much. Dad had made that decision himself. I was sure of it. You think I manipulated him? I snapped. My hands were shaking. I was there because I cared. Because when he was in the hospital, when he could barely breathe, I was the one sitting next to him. You two barely showed up. And now you think you can just walk in here and tell me I don't deserve this? No, I won't let you take what he left me. Evan's face twisted. He stepped closer, towering over me. For a moment, I thought he might actually hit me. But instead, he spat out, "Fine. Then we'll take it to court. Let's see how strong your case is when lawyers get involved." Julia tugged at his arm, but she didn't disagree. They both stormed out, leaving the air in the house so thick with tension I could hardly breathe. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced the hallways, running my hand along the wallpaper Dad had chosen decades ago. Every step I took, Every memory I touched fueled a mix of anger and heartbreak. Was this what Dad wanted? Did he know his decision would tear us apart like this? The next week was chaos. Letters from lawyers started arriving, official and intimidating. Evan wasn't bluffing. He had actually filed a legal challenge to the will. Julia hadn't put her name on the paperwork, but she was clearly behind it, egging him on from the sidelines. Mom sat me down one evening and sighed heavily. I don't know what to do. They're my children too. I can't take sides. You don't have to take sides, I said quietly, but you know what Dad wanted. You were there when he signed the will. You heard him say it. She looked at me with tired eyes that seemed to carry the weight of decades. I did, but wanting something and watching your family tear itself apart over it. That's different. And then she asked the question that haunted me. Is keeping this house worth losing them forever? I didn't answer right away, because deep down I didn't know. The court battle loomed ahead like a storm on the horizon. I could feel it building, motions, hearings, testimonies. And as much as I wanted to believe the truth would prevail, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much darker fight. The house wasn't just a house anymore. It had become a battlefield, a symbol of loyalty, resentment, love, and betrayal all tangled together. And no matter how it ended, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. By the time the week ended, my patience was running thin. I had spent every single day either fielding phone calls from lawyers, dodging sly remarks from Aunt Linda, or listening to my brother Ryan pretend like he was the savior of the family while casually erasing my role in everything. And now, as if all that wasn't enough, Saturday brought with it the official family meeting. It wasn't something formal like a reading of the will. Grandma's estate had already been divided up on paper by the attorneys. But in our family, things were never that simple. There had to be a meeting, organized by Aunt Linda, of course, where we all come together as a family and discuss what's fair. Her words, not mine. The meeting was at her house, and walking in was like stepping into hostile territory. The smell of her heavy lavender air freshener nearly choked me, and every corner of the living room screamed of her controlling personality. Doilies on every surface, furniture wrapped in plastic covers, and her framed photographs positioned so you couldn't avoid looking at them. Pictures of her children's graduations, their weddings, their vacations. Not a single photo of Grandma. I found a seat near the back, keeping my head low. Ryan and his wife had already staked their claim at the center couch like it was a throne. Aunt Linda stood by the fireplace, practically glowing with the self-importance of someone who thought she had the authority to settle everything. The moment I sat down, she gave me that smile. The fake one. The one she'd perfected over decades. Tight lips, no warmth in her eyes. Well, look who decided to join us, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I wasn't sure you'd come, considering how busy you've been lately. My jaw tightened, but I said nothing. Dad used to warn me, never let her see you rattle. So I didn't. I just nodded like her words slid off me, even though I could feel the sting. Uncle Jim was there too, sitting in the recliner, nursing a beer even though it was barely past noon. His kids weren't around, probably because they couldn't stand the drama either. But that didn't stop him from showing up for his slice of the pie. All right, let's get this started, Linda said, clapping her hands together as if she were calling a kindergarten class to order. We all know the lawyers have done their little paperwork shuffle. But let's be honest, none of us want this family torn apart because of a piece of paper. We need to decide, here and now, what's fair. Fair. That word practically echoed in the room, and I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from laughing out loud. Fair, in Linda's dictionary, meant whatever benefits Linda and her children. Ryan leaned forward, already taking his role as her sidekick. I agree. Grandma would have wanted us to be reasonable. She wouldn't have wanted us fighting like this. I couldn't take it anymore. You mean the same grandma who put everything in writing because she knew we'd fight like this? The same grandma who made sure the will was airtight because she didn't trust people to play fair. The room went silent for a moment. Ryan's wife shifted uncomfortably, but Aunt Linda just smiled, tilting her head like I was a foolish child. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, voice dripping with condescension. "Paperwork is one thing. Family is another. Don't you think it's a little selfish to cling to the letter of the law when your brother's been the one taking care of Grandma all these years? The jab hit me square in the chest. My heart pounded. Are you serious right now? I was the one who moved into Grandma's house for 2 years when she broke her hip. I took her to every doctor's appointment, stayed up with her through her pain, handled her bills when she couldn't keep up. Ryan popped in once a month to smile and act like the hero. Don't you dare rewrite history just because it's convenient. Ryan's face flushed red. That's not true. You're twisting things. Am I? I shot back. Where were you when she fell in the middle of the night and I had to call the ambulance? Where were you when she couldn't remember her meds? I didn't see you there, Ryan. I saw me. The tension in the room grew so thick it was hard to breathe. Aunt Linda tried to interject, but Uncle Jim cut her off, chuckling bitterly. Hell, none of this matters. We all know what's going on. The will says what it says. The lawyers will enforce it. You can hold all the little family meetings you want, Linda, but unless you plan on ripping the papers out of the courthouse, you're wasting your time. Linda's smile cracked for the first time, but she quickly recovered. Oh, Jim, you've always been so cynical. This isn't about the lawyers. This is about family trust. If we don't figure out how to work together, that house is going to tear us apart. And there it was, the house. Grandma's house. The real prize in everyone's eyes. Not the furniture, not the jewelry, not the savings account. The house. It wasn't even a mansion, just a modest 2-story home in the suburbs, but it carried weight. History. And apparently greed. Linda started pushing her narrative hard. Ryan deserves the house. He and his family need stability. They're raising children. They have responsibilities. It only makes sense. And the rest of us, well, we could divide the other assets accordingly. My blood boiled. So let me get this straight. You want Ryan to walk away with the house, the biggest asset Grandma owned, while the rest of us settle for scraps. That's your definition of fair. Ryan leaned forward, his voice low, almost threatening. It's not scraps, and you don't even want the house. You'd probably just sell it. I stared at him, trying to keep my voice steady. You're damn right I'd sell it. Not because I don't love Grandma's house, but because I know what she wanted. She didn't want us chained to it, fighting over who gets to live there. She wanted it to bring us something better, freedom, stability, a future. Selling it and splitting it evenly, that's fair. For a moment, no one spoke. I could feel everyone's eyes darting back and forth, waiting for someone to break the silence. Finally, it was Uncle Jim again, sighing heavily. Kid's got a point. Selling's the cleanest way. Splitting cash is easier than splitting walls. But Linda wasn't done. She straightened her back, voice rising. Cash doesn't build legacy. Cash disappears. That house is our legacy, and it belongs with family. Ryan will honor it. He'll keep it alive. I couldn't stop myself. Oh, please. Ryan doesn't want to honor it. He wants free real estate. He wants to sit in a house he didn't earn, pretending he's the chosen one. You think Grandma didn't see through that? That's why she didn't give it to him outright. That's why she divided everything equally. Because she knew what you're trying to pull now. The argument spiraled from there. Voices overlapping, accusations flying. Old wounds ripped open. Who helped Grandma more? Who deserved recognition? Who had sacrificed the most? It wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was decades of bitterness bubbling to the surface. Every slight, every resentment laid bare in Linda's overly decorated living room. And in the middle of it, I realized something that chilled me. This wasn't going to end cleanly. Not with reason. Not with paperwork. This fight was about more than money. It was about control, power, and pride. And people like Linda and Ryan weren't going to let go of that easily. When I left that day, my hands were shaking. My ears still rang from the shouting. But what haunted me most wasn't the noise. It was the look in Linda's eyes as I walked out. Cold. Calculating. It was the look of someone who wasn't going to stop until they got what they wanted. And I had no idea what that meant for me, or for Grandma's legacy. When I walked into the courthouse that morning, I felt like the entire weight of my family's history was pressing down on me. The mahogany doors, the smell of old paper, the way people shuffled in nervously, it all made me realize this wasn't just a fight over property. This was a fight over dignity, respect, and the twisted bonds that had held my family together all these years. The lawyer leaned toward me before the hearing began. Stay calm. No matter what accusations fly, don't lose your composure. Judges noticed that. I nodded, though my stomach was in knots. Across the room, my brother Jason sat stiff in his seat, jaw clenched, eyes locked on me like I was some enemy he'd sworn to destroy. And beside him, of course, was Linda, his wife, whispering into his ear like she was feeding poison. I swear she smirked at me when our eyes met. The case began with the reading of the will again. It was clear my dad had left the bulk of the inheritance, including the house, to me. Jason wasn't cut out completely. He had a share of investments and cash, but the house, the centerpiece of our family's identity, was mine. Jason's lawyer stood up, voice sharp and full of confidence. Your Honor, we believe undue influence was at play. We believe the defendant, he pointed directly at me, manipulated their father in his final years to change the will unfairly. I almost laughed out loud. Manipulated? If anything, Dad was the most stubborn man alive. He didn't let anyone push him around, not even his own doctor. But the judge raised an eyebrow, and I felt my chest tighten. They were spinning a story, and stories, whether true or not, had power in court. They called their witnesses first. Neighbors, distant relatives, even some so-called friends of Jason's who swore they had seen me pressuring my dad. It was ridiculous. One even claimed I had locked Jason out of the house near the end, which was pure fantasy. When it was my turn, I sat up straight, hands folded in front of me. My lawyer asked me simple questions. Did I ever force my father to sign anything? No. Did I ever prevent Jason from seeing him? No. Did my dad make his own decisions? Absolutely. Then came the moment that shifted everything. My lawyer handed over Dad's handwritten letters. Letters he had written in his last year, where he explained why he made his choices. They weren't just dry instructions. They were full of emotion, frustration, and clarity. Jason has always been reckless with money. I love him, but I can't trust him with a home. I know this decision will create tension, but I trust my name to preserve what I've built. This is not out of favoritism, but responsibility. The courtroom was dead silent as the words were read aloud. Jason's face went red, and he slammed his fist against the table, muttering, "That's fake. That's fake." The judge glared at him for the outburst. Inside, I wanted to scream at him. This is what Dad thought of you. Not because he hated you, but because you never showed him you could be responsible. But I kept quiet. The trial dragged for weeks. Every day, it chipped away at me. Reporters even showed up once. It turns out inheritance disputes in families with a long local history drew attention. My job started to suffer. Friends stopped asking me out because I always had some meeting with lawyers. But what hurt the most was the feeling that I didn't just lose a father, I lost a brother. Jason wouldn't even look at me in the hallways. When we crossed paths outside the courtroom, he muttered things under his breath, words like snake and traitor. Finally, after nearly a month, the judge gave the ruling. I remember the exact words. The will is valid. The inheritance is to be distributed as written. It should have been a moment of relief. And in a way it was. The house, the land, the legacy, they were mine to protect, just like Dad had wanted. But the victory was hollow. Jason stormed out without even waiting for the judge to finish. Linda followed behind him, shooting me a glare that could cut glass. That night, I stood alone in the old house. The silence was overwhelming. I ran my hand along the wooden banister, the same one I slid down as a kid when Dad would yell at us for roughhousing indoors. Memories flooded me. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, late-night talks in the kitchen. I should have felt peace. Instead, I felt grief. Days turned into weeks. I tried calling Jason, leaving voicemails, sending texts. No response. Mom's side of the family, who had always been closer to Jason, started keeping their distance too. At family gatherings, I was suddenly the outsider, the one who had taken everything. And yet, I hadn't taken everything. I would have given it all up if it meant keeping my brother. One evening, months later, I got a knock at the door. It was Jason. He looked rough, unshaven, tired like life had drained him. I didn't come to apologize, he said immediately. His tone was sharp, but his voice cracked at the edges. I just came to see the place one last time before I cut ties completely. I let him in. We walked the halls silently. He paused at Dad's study, staring at the old desk. I could see the memories washing over him, too. Finally, I said, "Dad loved you, you know." This wasn't about love. It was about trust. Jason's jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he'd lash out. But instead, he just whispered, "Maybe, but I'll never forgive you for taking his side." And then he walked out. I haven't seen him since. The house is mine now, but it feels emptier than ever. Sometimes I sit in the living room, staring at the walls, wondering if keeping the inheritance was worth losing my only sibling. Because in the end, the real inheritance wasn't the house or the money or the land. It was the broken bond between me and Jason, a fracture that might never heal. And that's the cruelest part. Money can buy houses, lawyers, and security, but it can't buy back family. So when I ask myself if I did the right thing, I don't know the answer. Maybe I honored Dad's wishes. Maybe I destroyed my family in the process. All I know is, if you're listening to this, don't let money define your relationships. Don't let greed or pride tear apart the people you love. Because once that bond is broken, no inheritance in the world can fix it. And if you've stayed with me this long, I want to ask you for something simple. If you want to hear more real, raw stories like this, stories that remind us of the fragile threads holding families together, hit that subscribe button. Join me so we can keep sharing these stories together. It means more than you think. I've always been the kind of person who overthinks everything. My friends call it being thoughtful. My girlfriend calls it being paranoid. And my mom used to tell me I had an old soul. Whatever label you put on it, I've never been the type to just go with the flow. I need to understand why people do what they do. And when someone acts in a way that doesn't make sense to me, I can't let it go. And that's what led me here, sitting at my kitchen table at midnight with my laptop open, trying to put into words something that's been eating away at me for weeks. I want to know if I'm actually the asshole or if I've just been made to feel like one. The situation started simple enough. I've been dating my girlfriend, Emily, for a little over 3 years. We met in college, both of us studying communications. She's bubbly, outspoken, and extroverted, the kind of person who can walk into a room and instantly make 5 new friends. I'm quieter, more reserved, the guy who'd rather listen than talk. Somehow, we balance each other out. Or at least I thought we did. The issue started about 2 months ago when one of her coworkers, a guy named Matt, started showing up in our conversations. At first, it was nothing unusual. She'd mention him in passing, like, "Matt said the meeting was a disaster today," or "Matt brought donuts to the office." Just small details from her workday. But over time, Matt started appearing more and more in her stories. Suddenly, it was, "Matt and I went out for lunch since the team was swamped," or "Matt walked me to my car because it was late." Then it became, "Matt and I were talking about relationships, and he said," I'll admit, I felt a little uneasy. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, though. I trust Emily, and I don't think she's the type to cheat. But still, it nagged at me. Why was this guy becoming such a big part of her life? Why did I, her boyfriend, know so much about him? The real tipping point happened one Friday night. Emily had gone out for happy hour with some coworkers, and when she came home, she was in a great mood, giggling, tipsy, talking a mile a minute. She started telling me about something funny Matt had said. And then, without thinking, she slipped and called him babe. Not once, twice. "Babe, Matt. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that," she stammered, laughing it off like it was no big deal. But to me, it was a big deal. I didn't explode or anything. I just got quiet. She noticed immediately and tried to reassure me. It was an accident. Seriously. You know, I call everyone babe sometimes. Except she doesn't. Emily has never called anyone else babe. That's our thing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it in my head, her laughing slip, the way she brushed it off. Was I overreacting? Was it harmless? Or was this a red flag I'd be stupid to ignore? The next morning, I brought it up again calmly. I told her it bothered me. She got defensive. "You're being paranoid. Matt is just a friend. You're reading too much into this." And maybe she's right. Maybe I'm overthinking. But since that night, I've noticed even more little things. Like the way she hides her phone screen when she texts sometimes. Or the way she suddenly started putting on makeup in the mornings, even when she's just going into the office. Or how, when she talks about Matt, her eyes light up in a way that feels different. Last weekend, we were at her parents' house for dinner. Her mom asked if we'd thought about moving in together yet, something we've talked about casually but haven't set in stone. Before I could answer, Emily laughed nervously and said, "Oh, I don't think I'm ready for that yet." It hit me like a punch to the gut. 3 years together, and she's not ready. But she sure seems ready to spend all her free time talking to Matt. Here's where I might actually be the asshole. After dinner, while she was in the shower, I looked at her phone. I know. That's a huge breach of trust. I've never done it before, and I don't feel good about it. But I couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. What I found wasn't explicit, but it wasn't innocent either. Their messages were full of inside jokes, late-night chats, and little comments that felt flirty. Nothing about crossing the line physically, but definitely emotional. The worst part? She told him things she hadn't told me. Fears about her job, frustrations with her family, even little details about her day that she hadn't bothered to share with me. It felt like he was getting a version of Emily that used to belong to me. When she got out of the shower, I confronted her. At first, she was furious that I'd gone through her phone. "Do you realize how invasive that is? Do you know how much you've crossed a boundary?" And she's right. I did cross a line. But when I brought up the messages, she went quiet. Then she started crying. "He's just my friend," she said. "I need someone to talk to sometimes. You're so serious all the time. And sometimes it feels like I can't tell you everything because you'll overanalyze it." That cut deep. Because maybe she's right. Maybe I'm too serious. Maybe I do overthink everything. But still, isn't your partner supposed to be the one you go to first? Isn't that what being in a relationship means? Since that night, things have been tense. She says she feels suffocated by my doubts. I feel like I'm slowly losing her to someone else. And I don't know what to do. Am I the asshole for looking through her phone and confronting her? Or is she the asshole for building this emotional connection with someone else and brushing off my feelings? I honestly don't know anymore. The fallout from that dinner at my parents' house felt like a bomb went off in slow motion. For days afterward, I kept replaying everything in my head. The look on my mom's face when she tried to smooth things over, my dad's silent disappointment, and Rachel's smug expression like she had won something just by humiliating me. I thought maybe she'd cool down the next morning. I woke up hoping she'd be in a better mood, maybe even apologize. Instead, she barely looked at me while making coffee, scrolling on her phone like nothing happened. "Morning," I said cautiously. She didn't look up. "Morning." About last night, I started, but she cut me off. "Don't start. I don't want to rehash it. Your family will always side with you, and you'll always play the victim. That's how this goes." That stung. I wanted to tell her how wrong she was, but every time I opened my mouth, I knew she just twisted around. I let it go, thinking maybe silence was the best option for now. But the silence didn't fix anything. If anything, it got worse. Days turned into weeks, and Rachel started pulling away in every possible way. She'd come home late without explanation, brush off any attempt I made to talk. And when we did interact, it was like I was just some roommate she barely tolerated. One night, I tried again. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through Instagram. "Rachel," I said, sitting across from her, "we can't just ignore this. We're engaged. We're supposed to be planning a life together." She finally looked up, eyes cold. Maybe I'm not sure that's the life I want anymore. It felt like a knife in my chest. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't know if I want to marry someone who can't stand up for me. Someone who still clings to mommy and daddy for validation." "That's not fair," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "You went after my family. What was I supposed to do? Sit back and let you insult them?" She crossed her arms. "You're supposed to put me first. Isn't that what marriage is? Choosing me over them." I didn't know what to say. Of course I wanted to choose her. I loved her, but not at the cost of destroying my relationship with my family. I didn't think love had to mean cutting ties with the people who raised me. That conversation ended in silence, and the cracks in our relationship deepened. The real breaking point came a few weeks later. My cousin Emily was getting married, and I got an invitation in the mail. Rachel picked it up from the counter before I saw it. her face darkening immediately. "Another family event?" she sneered. "What is this, the 15th wedding this year? Do you all just marry for sport?" I took the envelope from her hand. "It's Emily's wedding. She's my cousin. Of course I'm going." "Of course you are," she said bitterly. "And let me guess, everyone will smile, act fake nice, and then talk about me behind my back. You'll sit there pretending everything is perfect while your mom gives me dirty looks." "No one give you dirty looks," I said, frustrated. "You make up these scenarios in your head and then blame everyone for them." Her eyes narrowed. "Oh, so now I'm crazy? Is that what you're saying?" I didn't say that. I rubbed my temples, trying to stay calm. "I just think you're projecting your insecurities onto my family." That was the wrong thing to say. She exploded. "Insecurities? You think I'm insecure?" "No, what I'm is tired. Tired of being compared to your perfect little family. Tired of being told I don't measure up. Tired of feeling like I'll never be enough for you because I'm not your mom's clone." I sat there, stunned. "That's not what this is about. No one is comparing you to anyone." She grabbed her purse, storming toward the door. "I can't do this right now. I need space." And just like that, she was gone. That night, I sat alone in our apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had fallen apart so fast. Just a few months ago, we were picking out venues and tasting cakes, laughing about how stressful weddings were. Now I wasn't even sure if we'd make it to the altar. My phone buzzed. It was my mom. "Hi, honey," she said gently. "I just wanted to check in. You seemed tense the last time we saw you." I hesitated, then sighed. "It's Rachel. Things aren't good. She feels like I don't stand up for her against you guys." There was a pause. Then my mom said, "I never wanted to come between you two. If she feels that way, maybe I should back off. I don't know how to make her feel comfortable." That broke me. My mom, who had always been supportive and kind, was now questioning herself because of Rachel. "No, Mom, you're not the problem," I said firmly. "It's more complicated than that." But even as I said it, I realized how trapped I felt. I was stuck between the woman I loved and the family I couldn't abandon. No matter what choice I made, I was going to hurt someone. Rachel came home late that night. She smelled faintly of alcohol, and her eyes were red like she'd been crying. "Where were you?" I asked softly. "Out," she said shortly. "With who?" "Friends." "Rachel." She dropped her purse and glared at me. "Don't interrogate me. You don't get to play the concerned fiancé when you've made it clear where your loyalties lie." I swallowed hard. "I want to fix this. I want us to work. But I can't keep living like this, walking on eggshells, wondering when the next fight will explode." Her expression softened, just for a second. She looked so tired, so defeated. "Then maybe we're not meant to be." Those words hung in the air like smoke. For the first time, I realized she might really mean it. But here's the twist. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. She made breakfast, chatted about her day, even kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work. I stood there in the kitchen, completely thrown off. Was she playing mind games? Testing me? Or was she genuinely that unpredictable? I didn't know. All I knew was that I felt like I was slowly losing myself in this relationship, and I didn't know how much longer I could hold on. That's when my dad called. He rarely called me directly. Usually it was my mom, but this time his voice was steady, almost stern. "Son, I don't want to pry, but I can see something's wrong. Your mother is worried. I'm worried. And I'll tell you this. No woman worth marrying should make you feel like you have to choose between her and your family. That's not love. That's control." His words hit me like a freight train, because deep down, I knew he was right. But admitting that meant facing the possibility that Rachel wasn't the person I thought she was. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. So I kept pretending we could fix it, pretending love was enough, pretending I wasn't crumbling inside. But pretending only works for so long before reality kicks down the door. And when it did, it was uglier than I ever imagined. When I woke up the next morning, the house was quieter than usual. No clinking of pans, no muttered conversations in the hallway, not even the sound of someone making coffee. For a moment, I thought maybe I had overslept and everyone had already gone out. But when I stepped out of my room, I realized the truth. Everyone was avoiding me. The tension from last night had carried over, heavy and suffocating. The living room was spotless, almost too spotless, like someone had scrubbed away all traces of life just to keep themselves busy. I found a note on the counter, written in my mom's careful handwriting. Breakfast in the fridge. Don't forget we have to talk later. That note was worse than silence. I sat there at the kitchen table, staring at the plate she'd left for me, untouched. My stomach twisted, not from hunger, but from the sinking realization that things weren't going back to normal this time. I'd had fights with my family before. Who doesn't? But there was always some sense of inevitability, like we'd argue, simmer down, then pretend it never happened. But this felt different. This felt permanent. I tried to distract myself by scrolling on my phone, but even that betrayed me. Notifications from cousins' group chats lit up the screen, messages flying back and forth, and I wasn't tagged in a single one. They were talking about me. I could feel it. By noon, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I walked out to the backyard where my dad was pruning the bushes like he always did when he was pissed off. He didn't even look at me when I said, "We need to talk." He just clipped another branch, muttered, "I'm busy," and kept going. Something inside me snapped. Busy? With what? Pretending last night didn't happen? Pretending like you didn't side with everyone against me? Finally, he turned, slow and deliberate. His face was calm, but his eyes burned. "You embarrassed this family. You think standing up there and airing dirty laundry in front of everyone makes you brave? No, it makes you selfish." That word hit me harder than any shouting ever could. Selfish. I wanted to scream that I wasn't selfish, that I had spent my whole life swallowing insults, biting my tongue, keeping the peace. But the word stuck in my throat because a part of me wasn't sure anymore. I told the truth. I managed to say, my voice hoarse. And the truth, he shot back, doesn't always need to be shouted from the rooftops. Sometimes keeping your mouth shut is what holds a family together. I hated that logic. I hated the way he said, like it was noble to suffer in silence, noble to let people walk all over you. So you'd rather everyone believe lies than deal with reality? He shook his head and turned back to his plants. "You'll understand one day. Or maybe you won't." That was the end of the conversation. He didn't yell. He didn't slam tools around. He just dismissed me like I wasn't worth more than a clipped branch on the ground. I went back inside, shaking with anger. My sister was sitting on the couch, scrolling on her phone like nothing had happened. But I could feel her eyes on me, watching, waiting for me to explode. "What?" I snapped. She tilted her head, her voice dripping with fake innocence. "You really thought they'd take your side? After everything?" That smugness, it drove me insane. "Everything? You mean after years of you taking advantage of everyone, getting away with it, and me finally calling it out?" She laughed. Actually laughed. "You sound so bitter. Maybe that's why no one wants to hear you out. You make everything about being a victim." I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to yell. She wanted me to lose it. She wanted me to give her more ammunition. So instead, I just said, "One day you're going to push too far. And when that happens, don't expect anyone to protect you." For a split second, her smirk faltered, but she recovered quickly, rolling her eyes and muttering, "Keep telling yourself that." The rest of the day blurred into a haze of slammed doors, heavy silence, and my own restless pacing. I kept thinking about the look in my dad's eyes, the smirk on my sister's face, the way my mom's note avoided any real words. It all boiled down to the same thing. They didn't want the truth. They wanted comfort, and I had destroyed that. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything over and over again. Was I really the asshole here? Was I wrong for speaking up? Or was everyone else just so deep in denial that they couldn't stand someone breaking the illusion? Sometime past midnight, I heard muffled voices downstairs. My curiosity got the better of me. I crept down the hallway, careful not to make the old wooden floorboards creak, and peeked over the stair railing. They were all there, my mom, my dad, and my sister, huddled in the living room like a secret tribunal. Their voices were hushed, but I caught pieces. "Can't let this keep going. She's tearing us apart. Don't know what else to do with her." The words stung, sharp and unforgiving. "She's tearing us apart." That's what they thought of me. Not that I was standing up for myself, not that I had a point, but that I was the problem. I wanted to storm down there, confront them, demand they say it to my face. But I didn't. I just stood there, frozen, listening to the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally talk about me like I was a disease infecting their lives. When I finally crept back to my room, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was hurt in a way I couldn't put into words. And the worst part? I didn't know if this wound would ever heal. I wish I could tell you things calmed down after that confrontation with Emily, but the reality is it only made everything more tense. For days, the house felt like a war zone where no one was actually yelling, but every move was under silent judgment. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, but suffocating. The kind where you hear footsteps in the hallway and your chest tightens, bracing yourself for another blow. After Emily left that night, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled, my parents didn't say much. Mom sat at the table with her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. Dad kept pacing like he wanted to say something, but he couldn't find the words. And me, I just sat there, staring at the glass of water in front of me, wondering if this was all my fault. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Emily. "You're a selfish asshole. You've ruined everything. Don't talk to me again." And honestly, that cut deeper than I expected. Because despite all the manipulation, despite the guilt tripping, despite the years of her taking advantage of me, I didn't want to lose her. She was my sister, and the idea that I'd drawn a line so harshly that she was ready to erase me from her life made me feel sick. But I also couldn't deny the tiny bit of relief I felt. Like maybe, finally, I wasn't her doormat anymore. The problem was, things didn't stay quiet. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was my aunt, Emily and I's dad's sister, someone who usually only called on birthdays and holidays. My stomach dropped the second I saw her name flash across the screen. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, voice too sweet. "I just wanted to check in because, well, Emily's been really upset." Of course she had. Apparently, Emily had wasted no time spinning her version of events. She told my aunt that I'd kicked her out of her own family, that I was turning everyone against her, that I was jealous of her success. Success, by the way, meant the string of failed relationships and a handful of unpaid bills she somehow twisted into proof of her independence. I tried to defend myself, to explain what actually happened, but I could tell my aunt didn't want to hear it. She'd always been the kind to see Emily as this delicate, misunderstood flower. The truth? Emily was a hurricane, and people like my aunt just stood on the sidelines pretending the destruction was just bad weather. After hanging up, I realized Emily wasn't just mad at me. She was waging war, and she was pulling the rest of the family into it. The days that followed were a blur of tension. My mom, bless her, was caught in the middle. She didn't want to lose her daughter, but she also knew Emily had crossed the line too many times. Dad, on the other hand, was harder. He wanted peace, and in his mind, peace meant I should just let things go. But how many times was I supposed to let things go? It all came to a head a week later when Emily showed up again. This time, she didn't come alone. She brought her boyfriend, Ryan. Ryan had always rubbed me the wrong way. He was the type who wore sunglasses indoors and thought every conversation was an opportunity to brag about himself. And now, here he was standing in my parents' living room, smirking like he'd already won whatever argument Emily dragged him here for. "I'm here for my stuff," Emily said flatly, not even looking at me. I blinked. "Your stuff. My things. Clothes, books, the things I left here. Don't act like you didn't know this was coming." The way she said it, you'd think I'd personally stolen her belongings and locked them in a vault. But the reality was, most of what she left behind wasn't important. Half-empty bottles of shampoo, old sweaters, junk she didn't care about until it became a weapon. "Fine," I said, voice tight. "Let's get it over with." But of course, it wasn't that simple. Emily didn't just pack a box and leave. She dragged the process out, tossing things around dramatically, sighing loudly every time she pulled something from a drawer. Ryan leaned against the wall like some kind of bodyguard, chiming in with the occasional snide remark. At one point, Emily pulled out an old framed photo of the two of us from when we were kids, maybe 7 and 9 years old. We were sitting on the swings at the park, both of us grinning with ice cream smeared on our faces. She held it up, looked at it for a long second, then laughed bitterly. "Crazy, isn't it? how much people change. And then she dropped it on purpose. The glass shattered on the floor. That sound, it felt like something broke in me, too. Really, Emily? I snapped. What? She said, feigning innocence. It was an accident. Ryan smirked. Yeah, accidents happen. And in that moment, I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them both to get out and never come back. But I didn't. I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms, and I just stood there, letting the silence speak for me. When they finally left, lugging 2 boxes of her stuff, the house felt emptier than before. Not just because of the things she took, but because of the way she took them, like ripping off pieces of our family, one by one. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and all I could think was, am I the asshole? Was I really the villain here? Like Emily wanted everyone to believe? Or was I just finally standing up for myself after years of being her emotional punching bag? The truth was complicated, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this fight wasn't just about me and Emily. It was about years of unspoken resentment, years of being compared, years of feeling like one of us had to lose so the other could win. And deep down, I couldn't shake the fear that no matter how this ended, we'd both already lost. The silence in the room stretched, thick and suffocating. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, like it wanted to claw its way out my chest. My father's words kept circling in my head like broken glass. You need to apologize. You need to fix this. Apologize? Fix this? After everything they'd done, after the lies, the manipulation, the deliberate way, they painted me as selfish and ungrateful. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. Almost. But instead of laughing, I sat there on the edge of the couch, my palms sweaty and my breathing uneven, and I thought about every moment that led up to this exact confrontation. For weeks, months, honestly, I've been questioning myself. Was I overreacting? Was I being too harsh? Was I in fact the asshole? And yet, deep down, there was a voice, a stubborn, pulsing thing that kept insisting. No, you're not crazy. They're just that manipulative. The voice got louder the longer I sat there, watching them. My mom with her perfected expression of disappointment, like she was auditioning for some sad family drama. My dad, arms crossed, eyes cold, as if my failure to bend was personal betrayal. And then my sister, Rachel, leaning against the wall with a smug little tilt to her mouth, pretending like she wasn't enjoying every second of this. Because she was. She absolutely was. Finally, I broke the silence. My voice came out steadier than I expected. You want me to apologize? My dad's eyes flicked up to mine, sharp and expectant. Yes, that's exactly what I want. This family doesn't work if everyone decides to dig their heels in and put their pride above unity. Unity, I repeated, almost tasting the bitterness in the word. Unity would mean not stabbing each other in the back. Unity would mean actually listening to what I've been saying instead of shutting me down at every turn. Don't exaggerate. My mom snapped, her voice sharp like glass. We have listened. You just don't like what you hear. That's not the same thing. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stop. No, you didn't listen. You dismissed me, over and over. You made me feel like I was invisible in my own house. Every decision had to go Rachel's way. Every opinion I gave was brushed aside. And when I finally drew a line, suddenly I was the villain? You really think I'm going to roll over now, just because you don't like that I finally stood up for myself? Rachel gave a little laugh, low and derisive. Oh, come on. You're acting like some martyr. You're not a victim here. You've just always had a chip on your shoulder because mom and dad expect more from you. That's all this is, jealousy. Her words hit like a slap, but instead of retreating, something inside me snapped clean in two. I stood up so quickly the room seemed to jolt with me. Jealousy? That's what you think this is? Do you have any idea how exhausting it is to constantly be compared to you? To be told that if I just tried harder or did better, maybe I'd measure up? You've been the golden child since the day you were born, Rachel. You know it. Mom and dad know it. And you've used that to step on me every chance you got. And I'm done pretending it didn't destroy me. The smugness faltered on her face, but only for a second. My dad immediately jumped in, his voice rising. Enough. Don't you dare turn this into some attack on your sister. She's done nothing but try to help you, and all you do is resent her for it. I laughed then, sharp, humorless. Help me? Is that what you call it? She stole my ideas, undermined me in front of relatives, talked down to me like I was some useless child, and you just sat there nodding because God forbid Rachel ever be wrong. That's not help. That's sabotage. Mom's eyes narrowed. You're being dramatic again. Always so sensitive. And there it was. The phrase I'd heard my entire life. The one that had been weaponized against me so many times I could practically hear it echoing even when no one said it. You're too sensitive. It used to cut me down. It used to make me question every emotion, every boundary. But this time it fueled me. Sensitive. I repeated, voice shaking now with anger. Maybe I am, but at least I'm not cruel. At least I don't take pleasure in tearing people apart just because it makes me feel bigger. At least I know how to look in the mirror and own up to my mistakes. Can either of you say the same? The silence after that was deafening. My mom's lips pressed tight. My dad's jaw clenched. Rachel looked away, fiddling with her sleeve, as if suddenly the floor was fascinating. For the first time, they didn't have a snappy comeback. And that silence, God, it was liberating, but it didn't last. You've lost perspective, my dad finally said, his voice low but firm. Family isn't about keeping score. It's about forgiveness. If you can't understand that, then maybe you need to step back until you're ready to act like an adult. I stared at him. Act like an adult? You mean fall in line. Do what I'm told. Shut up and keep the peace, no matter how toxic it is. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence said it all. Something inside me settled in that moment. Not calm, exactly, more like clarity. I looked around the room one last time, really seeing them for who they were. Not the family I'd tried so hard to please, not the people I'd been desperate to make proud. Just flawed, selfish, blind individuals who refused to see me as anything other than a problem. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to keep begging for their approval. All right, I said quietly, straightening up. If that's how it is, then I guess I'm done. Mom blinked, startled. Done? What does that mean? I headed for the door. My legs felt like they were moving through mud, but I forced them forward anyway. It means, I said, my hand on the doorknob, that I'm not apologizing, not for finally standing up for myself, not for refusing to let you gaslight me anymore. If that makes me the asshole in your eyes, fine. I'll own it. But I'm not going to keep breaking myself just to fit into a role that was never meant for me. Rachel scoffed behind me. So what? You're just going to walk out and cut us off? Real mature. I turned my head, met her eyes one last time. No, I'm walking out to save myself. There's a difference. And with that, I opened the door and stepped into the cool night air. The weight didn't disappear right away. It clung to me as I walked to my car, as I sat in the driver's seat with my hands trembling on the wheel. But beneath the weight was something else, something steadier. Relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to win their approval. I wasn't chasing their love like scraps tossed from table. I was just me, and that was enough. Maybe they'd never understand. Maybe they'd always paint me as the selfish one, the problem, the asshole. But as I started the engine and pulled away from that house, I realized I didn't care anymore. Because sometimes being the asshole is the only way to finally be free. I never thought I'd be the kind of person writing something like this. Honestly, I always rolled my eyes when people said, "You don't realize what you have until it's gone." I figured that was just some cliche people used when they screwed up badly. But I get it now. God, do I get it? Because last month, the woman I thought I was going to marry walked out of my life without a warning, without a fight, without even a final goodbye. And the thing that breaks me is, I don't even know if I was the asshole or if I was just too blind to see the cracks forming until it was already too late. Let me back up a little. Her name's Emily. We met 5 years ago at the most random place ever, a grocery store. I was standing in the cereal aisle, holding 2 boxes of Frosted Flakes and Cheerios, trying to decide which one would make me look less like a guy who eats like a 12-year-old. She walked right up next to me, grabbed a box of Fruity Pebbles, and said, "Honestly, if you're struggling that hard, just go with the one that makes you happiest." I laughed. She laughed, and somehow that turned into me asking if she wanted to grab coffee. She said yes. That was the beginning of everything. The first year was straight out of a movie. I mean, we had that kind of chemistry where you don't even notice hours passing by because you're so wrapped up in talking. I'd never been so open with anyone before. She was the kind of person who asked real questions, who wanted to know the why behind everything. Why I hated my old job. Why I never called my dad anymore. Why I always avoided talking about my high school years. She didn't just take things at surface level. She wanted the truth, even if it was ugly. And I gave it to her. By the time we hit year 2, we moved in together. A small one-bedroom apartment downtown, nothing fancy. I was working long hours, trying to get promoted, and she was finishing grad school. Money was tight, but it didn't matter. We cooked pasta together on Wednesday nights, watched The Office reruns until 2 a.m., and argued over who stole the blanket. We weren't perfect, but I swear, I thought we were happy. But maybe that's the problem. I assumed. I didn't ask. Looking back now, I can see little things. Emily started staying late at school more often. She'd say she had to meet with a professor or work on a group project. Sometimes I wake up at 2 a.m. and find her sitting on the couch in the dark, scrolling through her phone, her face lit up by that blue glow. I'd ask what was wrong, and she'd just smile and say, "Nothing. Go back to bed." I never pushed. I figured if it was important, she'd tell me. Then came year 4. We started fighting, though I wouldn't even call it fighting. It was more like silence with sharp edges. She'd say something like, "Do you even care about this relationship anymore?" And I'd get defensive instead of really listening. I'd snap back. "Of course I do. Why would you even ask that?" But I never asked her why she felt that way. God, that's what kills me. I didn't ask. Then came a night, everything shattered. It was a Wednesday, I remember, because I had just gotten home late from work. I've been trying to finish a project for a big client, and I was stressed, hungry, and exhausted. I walked into the apartment, expecting to see her curled up on the couch. Instead, I found the apartment half empty. Drawers pulled open, closet doors wide. Her side of the dresser cleared out. I stood there frozen, like maybe I had walked into the wrong apartment. My brain couldn't process it. But then I saw it. A single envelope sitting on the kitchen table with my name on it. Inside, it was just one page. Handwritten. No long explanation. No breakup speech. Just, "I can't do this anymore. I need to leave before I lose myself completely. Please don't come looking for me. Emily." That was it. I can't even describe what that felt like. It was like someone reached into my chest and ripped out every organ all at once. 1 second she was there, part of my daily life, the person I shared everything with, and the next she was gone. No bouvier, no cloture, just emptiness. For days I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I'd sit on the floor of our apartment, surrounded by her absence, staring at the stupid blank walls. I kept waiting for her to come back, to walk through the door and say it was a mistake. But she never did. And here's the part that messes me up. I don't know if I drove her away. Did I make her feel invisible? Did I love her wrong? Did I stop showing her she mattered? Or was she fighting her own battles I never even saw? I replay every memory like a broken record, trying to find the moment she decided to leave. Was it that night I told her I couldn't talk because I was too tired? Was it the day I laughed off her saying she felt stuck? Was it the 100 little ways I failed to notice she was slipping away? I don't know, and I might never know, but I do know one thing. When someone leaves without saying a word, the silence is louder than anything else you've ever heard. I don't remember falling asleep that night. My head was heavy, my chest ached, and my eyes burned from crying. The room smelled faintly like her perfume because I'd taken the cardigan she used to wear on chilly nights and clutched it against me, desperate for something of her to hold. When I woke up, sunlight was filtering through the curtains. For a moment, there was this hazy second where I forgot everything. I expected to hear the sound of her making coffee in the kitchen, humming along to some old love song she never knew the words to. I even thought I heard her footsteps on the wooden floorboards. My heart leapt in this false hope. But then it hit me again like a wave. She wasn't here. She hadn't just gone out for a walk. She hadn't gone to work. She had left. The reality of it slammed into me all over again, fresh and sharp. The air felt too heavy in my chest. My hands trembled as I pulled the cardigan tighter around me. I checked my phone, even though I knew I shouldn't. No new texts. No missed calls. Nothing from her. Just silence. That silence. It was the worst part. If she had yelled at me before leaving, if she had left a note filled with cruel words, at least I'd have something. But silence was endless. It was a void that swallowed everything, and I couldn't stop myself from screaming into it. I wanted answers. I wanted to know why. My thoughts spiraled all day. Had I done something? Was it something I said? Something I didn't say? She always used to tell me she hated it when people didn't fight for her, when they just let her walk away. Was this some kind of test? Was I supposed to chase her down? But how could I chase her if I didn't know where she went? That night, I went to her parents' house. They looked surprised to see me on their doorstep, eyes bloodshot and my shirt wrinkled from wearing it 2 days straight. Her mom frowned but let me in. Her dad wouldn't meet my eyes. "She hasn't called you either?" I asked, desperate. Her mom shook her head. "No, we thought maybe she was with you." My heart sank. She hadn't called them. She hadn't called me. She hadn't called anyone. It was like she just erased herself from her own life. Her mom tried to comfort me, said sometimes people need space. Her dad muttered something about how maybe I should let her go if that's what she wanted. His words stung. They clung to me like poison. I went home more broken than before. The days started blurring together after that. I go to work, but I couldn't focus. Every sound, every face blurred. The only thing I cared about was checking my phone. I kept the ringer on high, even at night, just in case she called. But she didn't. 2 weeks passed. Then, out of nowhere, I saw her. It was at the grocery store. I'd gone in just to grab milk, my brain half dead from exhaustion. I was in the cereal aisle when I turned and saw her standing there. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, and she was wearing this oversized coat I didn't recognize. But it was her. I know her anywhere. For a second, I froze. My chest felt like it was going to explode. "Hey," I whispered, even though my throat was dry. She looked up. Her eyes widened for the briefest moment. Then she looked away like she hadn't seen me, like I wasn't even there. My legs moved on their own. I rushed toward her. "Wait, please. Talk to me. Just tell me what happened." She finally turned, and there was this coldness in her eyes I'd never seen before. "I can't do this," she said flatly. "I told you, I need space." "That's it." My voice cracked. "You just disappear, no explanation, nothing. Do you have any idea what this has done to me?" She flinched, just slightly, but then straightened her shoulders. "I didn't ask you to wait. You're making this harder than it needs to be." My heart shattered all over again. "Please," I begged. I didn't care that people in the aisle were staring at us. "If I screwed up, if I hurt you, just tell me. Don't leave me like this, not knowing." Her lips trembled for half a second, but then she shook her head. "I can't," she whispered. And just like that, she turned and walked away. I didn't chase her. My body wouldn't move. I just stood there, shaking, watching her disappear again. That night, I broke. I threw my phone against the wall. I ripped the sheets off the bed because they smelled like her. I punched the bathroom mirror until it cracked down the center, splintering my reflection into 1,000 broken pieces. The only thought in my head was, why wasn't I enough to stay for? Days turned into weeks again. I didn't see her, didn't hear from her. I started to wonder if that grocery store run-in had even been real. Maybe my brain just conjured her out of desperation. But then one evening my phone buzzed. It was a message from her. Just 5 words, "Please don't look for me." My stomach dropped. My hand shook so bad I could barely hold the phone. That was it. No explanation. No closure. Just those words. I stared at the screen for hours, trying to come up with something to say. A million drafts filled and deleted. Finally, I just typed one sentence. "I'll wait for you." And I hit send. No reply. But the thing about words like that is they sit in your chest like a weight. "Please don't look for me" became my curse. Every night, I lay awake wondering, why didn't she want to be found? Was she hiding something? Was she hurting in some way I couldn't understand? Or was it just me? Was I the thing she needed to escape from? I replayed our last months together again and again, desperate for a clue. I remembered little moments, the way she used to stare out the window at night, lost in thought. The way she'd sometimes hold my hand a little tighter, like she was afraid of losing me. The time she'd asked me, half joking, "Would you still love me if I just disappeared one day?" I always laughed and told her yes. But now those memories haunted me. Maybe she'd been warning me all along. And so I kept waiting. Every sound outside made me think she was coming back. Every message notification made my heart race. Every day, I felt this slow, suffocating ache of loving someone who had chosen to vanish without a trace. I wasn't angry anymore, just hollow. But deep down, there was still this fragile, desperate hope. Maybe one day, she'd come back. Maybe one day, I'd finally get the answer to the question that was destroying me inside. Why did she leave without saying goodbye? I could still hear the echo of that door closing. It wasn't just wood meeting metal. It was the final sound of something breaking between us, something that had already been fraying but still held on by invisible threads. When Sarah walked out, I sat there staring at the empty space she left behind, a space that felt bigger than the room itself. I didn't cry right away. Instead, I felt this strange stillness, like the air around me was holding its breath. My eyes darted around the room, looking at all the little pieces of her she hadn't taken. The coffee mug she always used with the chipped handle, her scarf thrown over the chair, the faint smell of her perfume clinging to the couch. These weren't just objects, they were reminders of a life that, until a few hours ago, still felt like it was ours. I wanted to grab my phone, to text her, to call her, to say, please come back, please don't let it end this way. But my pride, the same pride that had caused 1,000 little cracks in our relationship, tied my hands. I thought about what she'd said, the way her voice trembled when she told me she couldn't keep being the only one holding us together. The worst part? She was right. For weeks, maybe months, I'd been distant. Work had consumed me. Late nights at the office turned into half-hearted conversations when I finally got home. She tried to tell me about her day, about something funny that happened at the store, about a book she was reading, and I'd respond with a distracted, "That's nice," while scrolling through emails on my phone. I told myself it wasn't a big deal, that she understood how much pressure I was under. But what I didn't understand was that every time I brushed her off, I was slowly teaching her that her words didn't matter, that she didn't matter. And now, she believed me. That night, the apartment was too quiet. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my body heavy, but my mind racing. Sleep never came. Instead, I kept replaying our last conversation, twisting around in my head, wondering if I'd missed the moment where I could have stopped her from leaving. The next morning, I went into the kitchen and made 2 cups of coffee out of habit. One black, one with cream and sugar, exactly the way she liked it. I stared at the cup sitting on the counter until the steam faded and the liquid went cold. That's when the grief started to hit me, not in loud sobs, but in small, sharp stabs. I'd open the fridge and see the carton of almond milk she bought for herself. I'd walk into the living room and hear the echo of her laughter from nights we stayed up watching movies. I'd catch myself about to send her a meme or a random thought and realize she wasn't there anymore to receive it. A few days passed in a blur of autopilot. I went to work, answered emails, sat in meetings where people spoke and nodded, but I didn't hear a word. At night, I came home to silence, the kind of silence that made the walls feel closer every day. Then one evening, I saw her name light up on my phone. For a split second, my heart leapt. I thought maybe she was ready to talk. Maybe she missed me too. But when I opened the message, it wasn't what I hoped. "I'm staying at my sister's for now. Please don't come by. I need time to think." I stared at that text until the words blurred. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, desperate to write something that would change her mind. But what could I say? "I'm sorry" felt too small. "I love you" felt too late. So instead, I wrote nothing. I just let the silence between us grow deeper. The days turned into weeks. I tried distracting myself. I went out with coworkers, forced myself into conversations, scrolled endlessly on my phone. But nothing filled the emptiness. I found myself checking her social media late at night, looking for signs of her. A new post, a picture, even a like on someone else's status. Every time I didn't see her, I felt both relief and despair. Relief that she wasn't moving on yet, despair because she was still gone. And in the middle of all that, memories kept ambushing me. Like the time we got caught in the rain and ran into a cafe, dripping wet, laughing as we ordered hot chocolate. Or the night we sat on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, sharing quiet confessions we hadn't told anyone else. Or the argument we had when she wanted me to meet her parents again, and I made an excuse about being too busy. I could see her disappointed face as if she were standing right in front of me. I realized then that it wasn't just her absence that hurt. It was the weight of everything I didn't do, everything I didn't say. Weeks after she left, I came across one of her notebooks while cleaning. She used to scribble in it, poems, doodles, random thoughts. I sat down and flipped through it, and that's when I found something that broke me. A page filled with words about us. She had written, "I just wanted to look at me the way he used to ask me how I'm doing and really mean it. To remember that I'm here, that I matter. I'm scared that one day he won't notice when I stop trying." I read that page until the ink felt etched into my skin. She had been crying out for me, and I hadn't even heard her. That night, for the first time, I cried. Not the quiet, controlled kind of crying, but the raw, shaking kind. It felt like my chest was splitting open. I realized I wasn't just grieving her leaving. I was grieving the version of us that could have been saved if I had just listened sooner. After that, I knew I couldn't keep sitting in the silence. Whether or not she wanted me back, I needed to tell her what I should have said all along. But when I finally dialed her number and heard it ring, she didn't answer. And that silence, that unanswered call, felt louder than anything I'd ever heard. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily standing there in the doorway, her hand tightening on the handle of her suitcase, her eyes already half turned away from me. The silence in the house was unbearable. Even the refrigerator's hum sounded like it was mocking me. I got up around 3 a.m., pacing the floor of the living room. The scent of her perfume lingered faintly on the couch cushion where she had sat hours earlier, talking about things that felt more like warnings than a casual conversation. It was that familiar lavender smell she always wore, something that normally comforted me. That night, it felt like a ghost haunting the air. I picked up my phone more times than I could count, scrolling through her old texts. The silly memes she sent when she was bored. The random, "You up?" at midnight, followed by paragraphs of her deepest thoughts because she trusted me more than anyone. The heart emojis. The love you messages that always seemed to pop up when I needed them most. I thought if she really loved me once, maybe she still does. But then again, love doesn't always keep people from leaving. The next morning, I forced myself into autopilot. I made coffee, but it tasted bitter. I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone, waiting for a text that didn't come. My chest felt hollow, like part of me had already been carved out. By the afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to Emily's apartment. Her car was gone. Her windows were dark. I sat in my own car for an hour, convincing myself she'd drive up at any moment, that she'd get out and smile at me, tell me I was being ridiculous for doubting her, that she wasn't leaving me, not like that. But no car came. No es mai. No explicación. Just silence. When I finally walked up to her door, I noticed something that shattered me more than the emptiness. The small flower pot by her doorstep, the one I bought her for her birthday last year, was missing. She had always said she'd never get rid of it, no matter what. That was when I knew something was seriously wrong. Over the next few days, my life blurred. Work didn't matter. Food tasted like cardboard. Nights were endless. I couldn't focus on anything but the gnawing feeling in my stomach that Emily was slipping further and further away, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. Then, one evening, I got a call. It wasn't Emily. It was her best friend, Sarah. She sounded hesitant, almost guilty, as if she wasn't sure she should be telling me anything. "Hey," she said softly, "I think you should know something. Emily's been planning to leave town. She told me she needed a break from everything, her job, her family, Anu." The words felt like knives. "A break from me?" I asked, my voice cracking. Sarah sighed. "I don't think it's about not caring. I think she's scared. She doesn't know how to say it, so she's running instead." Running. That was Emily's pattern. I should have seen it sooner. She ran when her parents pressured her too much. She ran when jobs got overwhelming. She even ran from herself when she couldn't handle her emotions. And now, she was running from me. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was heartbreak. That night, I sat in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation we'd ever had. Every laugh, every fight, every kiss. And I realized something devastating. No matter how much I wanted to hold on to her, I couldn't make her stay. The next morning, I made a decision. I drove back to her apartment, hoping, praying, that she'd still be there. To my shock, her car was in the driveway. My chest tightened with both fear and hope. When she opened the door, she looked exhausted. Her eyes were puffy, like she hadn't slept in days. For a moment, we just stood there in silence. Finally, I said, "Are you really going to leave without telling me why?" Her lip trembled. She looked down at the ground. I don't know how to explain it. I can't do this anymore. Can't do what? I asked, my voice breaking. Us? Me? What did I do that's so unbearable you can't even say goodbye properly? Tears filled her eyes. It's not about what you did. It's about me. I don't know who I am anymore when I'm with you. I feel like I'm drowning in everything. Expectations, future plans, the weight of making it all work. I need space to breathe, and if I stay, I'll just resent you for it. Her words cut deep. I wanted to scream that she was wrong, that she didn't need to do this alone, that we could figure it out together. But something in her voice told me she had already made up her mind. I stepped closer, my throat tightening. "So you're just leaving?" She nodded slowly. "And that's it? After everything?" "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. The silence that followed was suffocating. I wanted to grab her, hold her, beg her not to walk away. But deep down, I knew if I begged, it would only push her further. So I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I let her go. I stood there, watching as she picked up her suitcase again. This time, she didn't hesitate at the doorway. She didn't look back. She just walked out, and the sound of the door closing behind her echoed like a final nail sealing a coffin. And just like that, she was gone. When I woke up the next morning, the silence in the apartment was different. Not just empty, different. It wasn't the kind of quiet you got when someone left for a walk or went downstairs to grab breakfast. It was the kind of silence that pressed in on you, like the walls knew something had been taken away and they were grieving with me. I called out her name, my voice cracking midway, hoping for even the faintest sound of her answering. Nothing. Just the low hum of the fridge and the creak of the old wood as I moved through the rooms, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Her suitcase was gone. The corner where it always sat, tucked against the dresser, was empty now. The sweater she wore when she was cold at night, missing. The little pouch of makeup she never really used but carried anyway, gone. And then I saw it. On the counter, under the morning light that filtered through the half-closed blinds, was an envelope with my name written across it. Just my name, no flourish, no little heart at the end like she used to leave on notes years ago. My chest tightened, my hands shaking as I picked it up. I didn't open it right away. My body wouldn't let me. I sat down at the kitchen table, the letter heavy in my hands, like it already knew it carried the weight of finality. When I finally tore it open, her handwriting rushed at me, familiar yet shaking, like she had cried while writing, or maybe her hands trembled with the decision. Asterisk, I don't know how to start this, so I'll just start. You've given me love, more love than I thought I'd ever deserve. But somewhere along the way, I realized I wasn't giving you the same back. At first, I told myself it was just a phase, that if I held on longer, if I tried harder, it would feel the way it used to. But months went by, and that fire inside me kept dimming, and it wasn't fair. To you, to me, to us. You deserve someone who looks at you the way you looked at me all these years. Someone who isn't fighting her own shadow every time you smile at her. I didn't have the courage to say it out loud. So I'm writing it here because if I looked in your eyes, I would break down and stay, and that wouldn't be right. Please don't hate me. Please remember me for the good days. And please, when the ache passes, let yourself find love again. You'll always be part of me, but I can't keep being part of us. Goodbye. Asterisk. I didn't realize I was crying until the words blurred and I couldn't see the paper anymore. The tears fell so fast they splattered the ink, smudging her last line until goodbye looked like a wound across the page. I sat there for what felt like hours, the letter clutched against my chest, rocking back and forth like if I moved enough, time would rewind, and I'd hear her keys jingling as she came back through the door. But time didn't move backward. It never does. That night, I lay in our bed, her side cold and empty. I turned to face the pillow she used to hug, the faintest trace of her perfume still lingering. I buried my face into it, my body shaking with sobs I couldn't control. The kind of crying that doesn't make sound at first until it does, and it rips through you like thunder. Days passed, but they blurred into each other. The apartment was a museum of her absence. Her coffee mug was still by the sink, her strand of hair caught in the bathroom sink, her laughter still echoing in the walls of my mind. I try to distract myself, work, cleaning, running, but grief doesn't care about schedules. It sat in my chest like a stone, heavy and unmoving. And every night, when I came back home, I half expected to hear her, to see her curled on the couch, legs tucked under her, looking at me with that tired smile she always had after a long day. But the couch stayed empty. Weeks later, I got a message. It wasn't from her. It was from one of her friends. They said she'd moved across the state, staying with her sister for now. She was doing okay, they said, trying to figure herself out. I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to type, tell her I love her, tell her I'll wait, tell her to come home. But I didn't. Instead, I just typed, thanks for letting me know. And then I sat there, staring at the blinking cursor, realizing how final it all felt. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she never really had been. Months crawled by. People told me it would get better with time, but time didn't heal. It just stretched the wound until it became part of me. I laughed again eventually, went out with friends, smiled at things I thought I never would again. But at night, when everything was quiet, she was still there. Her absence became its own presence. And sometimes when I closed my eyes, I'd hear her voice, soft and trembling, saying that one word I could never forget. Goodbye. I don't know if she'll ever hear this, or if it matters anymore. But if she does, if some part of the universe carries my words to her, I hope she knows I loved her. With everything I had, with everything I was. And even though she left, even though she broke me in ways I didn't know a person could break, I'll always hold a piece of her in my heart. Maybe that's what love really is. Not holding on forever, but learning how to let go, even when it tears you apart. If you've ever had someone walk out of your life without looking back, if you've ever felt the weight of goodbye pressing against your chest, I just want you to know you're not alone. Pain like this feels like it will swallow you whole, but slowly, day by day, you'll learn to live with it. You'll carry it differently. And one day, when you least expect it, you'll breathe a little easier again. That's what I'm learning. Slowly. And if you've stayed with me through this whole story, I just want to say this. Don't leave right now. Stick around. There are more stories, different ones, but all of them real, all of them carrying pieces of the human heart. Hit that subscribe button and be part of this journey with me. Because sometimes sharing these stories is the only way any of us survive them. I never thought I'd be the type of person to sit down and write something like this. But when your whole world cracks open in a way you didn't see coming, sometimes the only thing left to do is try to pour it all out. I wasn't some hopeless romantic or clingy guy. I had my flaws, I know I did, but when I tell you that I gave everything to her, I mean it. I didn't just fall in love with her. I built my whole life around her. And then, one morning, she was just gone. No volví. No explanación. No, I need space. She just vanished like I had never meant a thing. But I guess to really understand how deep the knife went, I need to start from the beginning. How we met. It was late 2019, back when the world still felt normal. I had just gotten a new job at a marketing firm, and my whole focus was on proving myself. I wasn't even thinking about dating. But one night, my buddy dragged me to this low-key house party. I remember being annoyed because I had a presentation the next morning. I thought I'd show up, drink a beer, and dip. Then I saw her. She wasn't even the center of attention. She wasn't the loudest in the room or the one laughing the hardest. But there was something about the way she carried herself, this quiet confidence, this light. She was sitting on the arm of the couch, wearing this faded denim jacket, and laughing at something one of her friends said. I don't know what it was, but my eyes locked on her like I'd been waiting my whole life to notice her. I found out later her name was Emily. My friend introduced us, and we started talking. I expected small talk, maybe some shallow chatter, but within minutes we were knee-deep in a conversation about books, childhood dreams, and how both of us secretly hated house parties. It felt effortless. You know that rare feeling when you meet someone and it's like you've known them forever? That's what it was like with her. The spark. The days after that party felt different. We started texting, first casually, then constantly. She had this way of turning even the most boring part of my day into something worth talking about. I'd be in the middle of some dull meeting, and my phone would buzz with her sending me a meme, or a random thought, or a picture of her cat curled up on her lap. By our second week of talking, I already knew I wanted to see her again. We met up for coffee on a Saturday morning, and what was supposed to be an hour turned into 6. We walked around downtown, sat by the river, and talked about everything. Our childhoods, our families, our fears. She told me how she always felt like the responsible one in her family, holding everything together when no one else would. I told her about my messy relationship with my dad and how I always felt like I had something to prove. There was this raw honesty between us, like neither of us was pretending. And by the time the sun was setting, I couldn't resist anymore. I kissed her. She smiled against my lips, and I swear it felt like the world paused for a second. That night, when I dropped her off, she hugged me tight and whispered, "I feel safe with you." Falling too hard, too fast. If I'm being real, I fell for her faster than I should have. But she gave me every reason to. She wasn't just kind, she was present. When she looked at you, she actually saw you. She remembered the smallest details, like how I hated the sound of ticking clocks, or how I always took my coffee black, but with exactly 1 sugar. She'd pick up little things that I never even told her mattered. One night, a couple months in, I came over to her place after a brutal day at work. I was exhausted, ready to just crash, but when I walked into her apartment, she had lit candles, made pasta from scratch, not the box kind, and had my favorite playlist softly playing in the background. When I asked why, she just shrugged and said, "You seemed off when we talked earlier. I wanted to make you feel better." I remember staring at her, speechless, thinking, this is what love is supposed to feel like. And God, I loved her. The shift I didn't notice. It's funny how you never realize the exact moment things start to slip. If you're not paying attention, you only notice once the damage is already done. For us, it started small. She'd take a little longer to reply to texts. She'd cancel plans here and there, saying she was tired or had work stuff. Nothing major. At first, I didn't think much of it. People get busy. Relationships have ebbs and flows. But then there were moments that didn't sit right. Like one evening, we were watching a movie on her couch. She was curled up against me, but her phone kept lighting up. She kept glancing at it, locking the screen, pretending it was nothing. When I asked, she said it was just a group chat. Another time, I brought up the idea of taking a weekend trip together. Something small, maybe a drive up to the mountains. She hesitated, her face tightening for just a second before she said, "Maybe we'll see." I brushed it off, told myself I was overthinking. But deep down, this little knot was starting to form in my stomach. The day everything changed. March 12th. That date is burned into me. We had plans to meet up at my apartment. I was making dinner, excited to see her. I texted her around 5 p.m. "Hey, should I open a bottle of wine?" No response. 6 p.m. I texted again. "Everything okay?" Nothing. By 7, I called. It rang, then went to voicemail. I started to panic. She wasn't the type to just not show up. I thought maybe something happened. An accident, a family emergency. I drove to her apartment, but when I got there, the lights were off. Her car was gone. I tried again the next morning. Texts, calls, even a message on Instagram. But it was like I'd been blocked from her life overnight. Her number went straight to voicemail. Her socials were gone. No explanation. No closure. Just silence. The ghost. Do you know what it feels like to have someone carve themselves into every corner of your life and then vanish like they were never real? It's like trying to breathe, but your lungs don't work. At first, I thought maybe she needed space. Maybe something happened, and she'd come back with an apology, an explanation. But days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. And the worst part wasn't just losing her. It was the not knowing. Did I do something wrong? Did she meet someone else? Did she ever even love me? Every memory started to feel like a lie. Every laugh, every kiss, every whispered, "I feel safe with you," all of it suddenly looked fake in the rearview mirror. And that's what broke me. I don't think there's any way to explain what those first weeks of silence really did to me. It wasn't just about a girlfriend who didn't text back or a relationship that suddenly hit a wall. It felt like I was being erased, like the person I had shared so much of myself with just pressed delete on me. Every morning I'd wake up, roll over, and check my phone before even opening my eyes all the way. Notifications would sit there, mocking me. Emails I didn't want, junk promotions, group chats that didn't matter. But never her name, never her words. I used to think love had this glow around it. Something safe, something warm. But silence has a way of making even your best memories feel poisoned. I kept replaying that last night in my head. How she kissed me goodnight, how she squeezed my hand and said, "I'll see you tomorrow." She smiled. She looked fine. There wasn't even the faintest sign that it would be the last time. And yet, every day after, it was nothing. At first, I made excuses for her. Maybe her phone broke. Maybe she got sick. Maybe her family needed her. I convinced myself 100 times a day that something external was keeping her away, that she couldn't want to disappear like this. I called. I texted. I sent voice notes when the typing felt too impersonal. I even drove by her apartment once, sitting outside like some idiot with my hands gripping the steering wheel, hoping I'd see her walk out, that she'd notice me and wave, and the whole nightmare would be over. But her blinds were shut. No car in the driveway. Lights out. It was like she'd been swallowed by the earth. The thing about ghosting is, it doesn't just take away the person. It eats at you. Every unanswered message started to feel like a judgment, like proof that I wasn't good enough. I found myself scrolling through every conversation we'd ever had, searching for the moment I went wrong. Did I say something offhand? Did I bore her? Was I too much? Not enough. The questions never stopped. My friends noticed. They'd invite me out, and I'd decline, mumbling some excuse about being busy. My mom asked if I was sleeping enough because the circles under my eyes were giving me away. My best friend Chris sat me down one night and said, "Man, you gotta stop. If she wanted to be here, she'd be here. Don't do this to yourself." But how do you turn off? How do you just erase feelings that wrap themselves into your entire life? I didn't want to admit it out loud, but part of me hated her for it. Not for leaving. People leave, I get that, but for choosing silence. For not giving me the decency of words, of closure, of something. You know what silence does? It makes you start hating yourself in ways you never thought you could. 2 months passed. By then, I wasn't waiting on texts anymore. I had stopped calling. I had stopped checking her socials after blocking and unblocking her like some desperate fool. But she was still everywhere. In a song that played when I walked into a coffee shop. In the bench at the park where we had our first kiss. In the half-empty drawer she used to keep at my place. I couldn't even bring myself to clean it out. Her sweater was still there, smelling like her perfume, mocking me every time I opened it. And then one night, it happened. I was sitting in my car outside a grocery store, not even sure why I had parked there, staring at the rain sliding down the windshield. My phone buzzed. My chest tightened in that automatic, stupid hope I had trained myself to bury. It was her name. After 2 months. I froze. My hand shook so badly, I almost dropped the phone. I opened it like I was defusing a bomb. Her message. "Hey, can we talk?" That was it. 2 months of nothing. 2 months of me tearing myself apart. 2 months of me wondering if I even mattered at all. And suddenly, "Hey, can we talk?" I should have been angry. I should have ignored her the way she ignored me. But my heart didn't care about logic. My heart leapt like it had been starving and finally got fed. I typed back too fast. "Yeah, when? Where?" Her response came after a long pause that made my hands sweat. "Tomorrow night. At the park. The one near your place." I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing 100 different versions of the conversation. Would she say she was sorry? Would she say it was over? Would she beg for me back? I wanted to believe she had an explanation that made sense. That maybe something truly awful had happened, and ghosting me wasn't her choice. I want to believe in her again. But another part of me, the broken part, knew that nothing she said could erase what she'd done. And still I was going, because even if she gave me nothing, even if it hurt worse than the silence, I needed answers. The next night, I drove to the park early. The sky was still painted orange with the last of the sunset. The air had that crisp, cool bite of fall. I sat on the bench, the same one where we'd once sat eating cheap takeout. laughing until our sides hurt. And then I saw her. She walked toward me slowly, almost cautiously, like she was afraid of what she'd find. She looked thinner. Her hair was tied back loosely, and her hands were shoved into her jacket pockets. When she sat down next to me, I swear my heart was so loud I thought she could hear it. "Hi," she said softly. I didn't say hi back. I couldn't. My throat was too tight. We sat in silence for what felt like hours, the weight of it pressing between us. Finally, she spoke again. "I owe you an explanation." My laugh was bitter before I could stop it. That's one way to put it. Her eyes dropped. She bit her lip like she was trying to hold back words. And then she looked at me, really looked at me. "I didn't disappear because I stopped caring," she said. "I disappeared because I didn't know how to tell you what was happening." Her voice cracked, and in that moment, everything inside me screamed for answers. But I also knew whatever came out of her mouth next was going to change everything forever. I thought about calling her again that night, but I didn't. Something inside me felt like if I reached out one more time, it would push her even further away. It was strange. This girl who used to call me 3 times a day just to tell me something silly from her shift at work or to ask if I'd eaten suddenly couldn't even text me goodnight. Still, I went to bed with my phone on the pillow next to me, hoping it would light up with her name. I stared at the screen in the dark, waiting, bargaining with myself. If she texts by 1 a.m., I'll forgive her for all of this. If she texts by 2 o'clock, I'll pretend everything's fine. If she doesn't text at all, I don't know. She didn't. The next morning, I woke up with a headache from how little I'd slept. I checked my notifications the second my eyes opened, but there was nothing. Not even a meme. I try not to spiral, but everything reminded me of her. My coffee tasted bitter. Without her complaining, I added too much sugar. The bus ride to work felt quiet without her morning "good luck" text. Even when my boss asked if I was okay, I realized my mood must have been written all over my face. By lunchtime, I caved. I called her. The phone rang and rang, then went to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. It was like yelling into an empty cave, my own voice echoing back at me with no response. I went home that night more restless than ever. I pulled up our old messages, scrolling through months of conversations where she couldn't stop telling me she loved me. I kept asking myself, how do you go from that to this? How do you go from constant love to silence overnight? I started to wonder if she had met someone else. The thought gutted me, but it seemed possible. I told myself people don't just vanish unless there's a reason. Maybe she was too cowardly to tell me the truth. Still, I didn't want to believe it. 2 days later, I went to her apartment. My hands were shaking the whole train ride there. She didn't answer when I knocked. I knocked again, harder, calling her name. I even tried peeking through her window like some desperate stranger. Nothing. Her neighbor, a sweet old lady who always said hello when I visited, poked her head out of her door and asked, "Looking for Emma?" I nodded, trying to smile. "She hasn't been around," the woman said. I thought maybe she was out of town. My stomach twisted. Out of town? She hadn't told me anything. She hadn't told me anything at all. I thanked the neighbor and left, but my chest felt like it was collapsing. Walking back down her street, I realized I didn't know anything anymore. Not where she was, not why she was ignoring me, not if she even still loved me. That night, I sat on my floor with my phone in my hand, drafting and deleting texts. Please just tell me if you don't want this anymore. I deserve to know if I did something wrong. Why are you doing this to me? Every message I wrote sounded too desperate, too raw. Eventually, I just sent one. "I don't know what's happening, but I miss you." It showed delivered. She never opened it. Days turned into a week. A week turned into 2. Her absence became the loudest sound in my life. I tried to focus on work, on friends, on anything else, but it was like trying to ignore a broken bone. Every moment was laced with a reminder that someone I loved with everything I had was choosing to vanish on me without a word. At night, I replayed our last day together over and over. We had laughed at some dumb show. She had kissed me before leaving. Nothing was wrong. At least nothing I could see. And that was the part that hurt the most. If I'd seen a fight coming, maybe I could have braced for it. But instead, it was like she reached over in the middle of a hug, flipped a switch, and decided to disappear. I started dreaming about her. In one dream, she walked past me on the street without saying a word. In another, I chased her down a hallway that kept stretching longer and longer until she was gone. I would wake up breathless, my pillow damp with tears I didn't remember crying. Then one night, weeks later, I saw her name finally light up on my phone. For a split second, I felt pure relief. She was alive. She was okay. She was reaching out. But the message was short. Cold. I'm sorry. Please don't contact me again. That was it. No explanation. No closure. Just a wall slammed between us. I read it 100 times, trying to find some hidden meaning, some clue. I even zoomed in on the punctuation like an idiot, wondering if the period at the end was too final. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to beg. But all I did was sit there in silence, my chest aching in a way I didn't know was possible. Because that was the moment I realized she had already left me long before she sent that text. And I had no idea why. The weeks after Ava disappeared from my life stretched on like some cruel punishment I couldn't escape. By this point, it had been nearly 2 months since her last message, 2 months of silence that pressed against my chest every single day. You'd think that after that long, I'd have accepted it, moved on, let go. But the truth was I still lived inside her absence. Every night I sat in the dim glow of my laptop screen, rereading old texts, scrolling through her pictures, rewatching the videos she sent me late at night when she couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop torturing myself with memories because they were all I had left. But as much as I wanted answers, I also felt this strange hesitation growing inside me. A part of me was terrified of actually finding out the truth. What if she'd chosen someone else? What if she'd gotten bored of me and just tossed me aside like I never mattered? That kind of rejection felt unbearable, almost worse than silence. Still, I couldn't go on like this. I had to know. One evening, I made the decision to drive down to her hometown. It was reckless and borderline desperate, but I convinced myself it was necessary. I knew the name of her town, the street where her parents lived. She'd told me once when we talked about where she grew up. I put the address into Google Maps, packed an overnight bag, and just went. The drive was long and heavy, my thoughts spinning the whole way. I kept rehearsing scenarios. What I'd say if she opened the door, how I'd react if her parents answered, what I'd do if some guy showed up next to her. None of them ended well. When I finally pulled onto the quiet suburban street, my stomach was in knots. I parked across from the small white house she described to me years ago. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, staring at the porch light flickering in the early dusk. For 10 minutes I sat there, frozen, wondering if this was crossing a line. Maybe it was. Maybe I was just some pathetic guy who couldn't take a hint. But my heart screamed at me that I needed to do this. I had to see her, even if it meant shattering myself in the process. I got out of the car, walked up the front path, and knocked on the door. My pulse hammered so hard I thought I might pass out. A woman answered, her mother. I recognized her instantly from the few pictures Ava had shared. She looked older than in the photos, her eyes tired, her posture weary. "Hi," I stammered. I'm a friend of Ava's. Is she home?" The look that crossed her face will haunt me forever. Her expression tightened, like she wasn't sure whether to let me in or slam the door shut. Finally, she opened it a little wider and said quietly, "You'd better come inside." That alone told me something was very wrong. I stepped into the living room, my throat dry, my heart pounding. Family photos lined the walls, but what hit me like a punch to the chest was one large framed picture on the mantel. Ava, smiling, wearing a white summer dress I'd never seen before. Beside it was a vase of fresh lilies, and next to that, a small cluster of candles melted down from repeated lighting. It took me only a few seconds to understand. My knees nearly gave out. I turned to her mom, who was watching me closely, and whispered, Where is she?" Her mom's eyes filled with tears as she said softly, "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Ava passed away in March." The words crashed into me like a freight train. Passed away. My brain refused to process it. I shook my head violently, like if I denied it enough, it wouldn't be true. No, that's not possible," I muttered. "I talked to her in March. She was fine." Her mom sat down heavily on the couch and gestured for me to do the same. I couldn't move. My body felt like stone. Finally, she said she didn't want to worry anyone. Not her friends, not you. She was sick. She'd been battling it for years, but she didn't like talking about it. She always tried to protect the people she cared about. I felt my chest cave in like I couldn't breathe. My ears rang, the room spinning around me. All this time, every unanswered text, every silent night, it wasn't rejection. It wasn't abandonment. She was slipping away, and I hadn't even known. She didn't tell me. I croaked. Her mom shook her head sadly. She didn't want pity. She wanted to be remembered for how she lived, not for being sick. She spoke about you sometimes, though. Said you made her laugh, that you helped her forget, even if just for a little while. I broke. Right there in a stranger's living room, I fell apart. Tears poured down my face as I buried my head in my hands, sobbing harder than I ever had in my life. Her mom placed a hand gently on my shoulder, her own tears falling. For a long time, we just sat in that room together, the silence filled with grief and the faint crackle of the candle on the mantel. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed in a cheap motel near the highway, lying awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, my heart in shreds. I finally had my answer. Ava hadn't ghosted me. She hadn't abandoned me. She'd been fighting a battle I never knew about, and in the end, she couldn't win. The silence wasn't her choice. It was fate's, and somehow, that hurt even more. When I sat down to write this part, I wasn't sure how to even begin. It feels like I've been carrying around a weight inside me that I can't put down, no matter how many days pass, no matter how much I try to tell myself that life moves on. But the truth is, when someone you love disappears without an explanation, without closure, without even the courtesy of a goodbye, it doesn't feel like life moves on. It feels like you're stuck in time, frozen in the last moment you saw them, replaying every word and glance, every laugh, every argument, trying to make sense of the silence that came after. And now I'm standing at the edge of something I never thought I'd face. The truth. The last attempt. For months after she ghosted me, I tried to move on. I tried dating again, half-heartedly swiping on apps, meeting people for coffee, but every time I sat across from someone, all I could think about was her. The way she tilted her head when she was curious. The way her hands always fidgeted with her sleeves when she was nervous. The way her laugh spilled out like she wasn't afraid of being too loud. But she was gone. No calls. No messages. Not even the decency of blocking me, which might have hurt less than the emptiness of unanswered texts. It was like shouting into a cave and hearing nothing back. Not even an echo. My friends told me to let it go. She's not worth it, man. If she wanted to be in your life, she would be. Don't waste your time. But love doesn't work like that. You don't just decide to stop caring. You don't wake up one day and say, okay, I'll stop wondering if she's okay. I'll stop checking my phone every time it buzzes. I'll stop imagining her name lighting up my screen. So I did what I swore I wouldn't do. I drove to her hometown. I told myself it was just to get answers, to put my mind at rest. Maybe she'd slam the door in my face. Maybe she'd laugh at me. Maybe she'd say she'd never loved me. But even those would have been better than the silence. Her mother's house. I pulled up outside the small blue house I remembered from the story she told me. Her mom used to bake pies on Sundays. They had a dog that barked at the mailman. She used to sit on the porch swing with her headphones on, blocking out the world. When her mom opened the door, I could see the exhaustion in her eyes before she even spoke. You're him, aren't you? She said softly. I nodded. The silence stretched, heavy and thick, until finally, her mom stepped aside and motioned for me to come in. I thought she'd yell at me. I thought she'd tell me to leave her daughter alone. But instead, she sat me down at the kitchen table and poured me a cup of coffee like we were old friends. And then she told me the truth. The truth I never wanted. She didn't want you to know, her mom whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. She wanted to protect you. That's the kind of person she was. Always protecting everyone else, even when she was the one hurting. I felt my chest tighten, a sick dread crawling up my throat. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Her mom reached across the table, holding my hand in hers. And then, in the quietest, most devastating voice, she said, she was sick. My mind went blank. She had been sick for a long time. She didn't want anyone to see her like that, least of all you. She thought it would be easier if she just slipped away. I couldn't breathe. The world tilted, spun, shattered all at once. Sick? No. She was full of life. She was light itself. She couldn't have been sick. She couldn't have just left me without telling me. But the pieces fell into place in my head. The tired eyes I sometimes noticed when she thought I wasn't looking. The moments when she'd go quiet, staring into the distance. The way she once said, "If anything happened to me, I'd want you to remember me like this, happy." I thought she was just being dramatic. I thought wrong. The goodbye I never got. Her mom pulled out a small, folded letter. "She left this for you." She said, "If you ever came looking, this would be yours." My hand shook as I opened it. Her handwriting. Messy, tilted to the left, little hearts dotting the I's. "If you're reading this, it means you didn't let me go. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry I couldn't stay. I'm sorry I didn't give you the goodbye you deserved. But I wanted you to remember me as the girl who laughed too loudly, who danced in the rain, who loved you with her whole heart. Not as someone slowly fading away. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Please don't let my absence keep you from finding love again. I'll always love you. Always." By the time I finished reading, I couldn't see the words through the blur of tears. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. I wanted to ask her why she thought leaving me in silence was better than letting me hold her hand through the storm. But all I could do was sit there, clutching the letter, drowning in the weight of what could have been. The unexpected ending. It's been a year since that day. A year of grief. A year of healing little by little. A year of carrying her words with me, folded neatly in my wallet, worn from being opened too many times. And then, one evening, I was sitting on a bench at the park where we used to meet. I pulled out the letter, as I always did when the ache got too heavy. That's when I heard a small voice say, "Excuse me, are you reading something from Lily?" I looked up, startled. A girl stood there, maybe 14, holding a sketchbook. Her eyes, they were Lily's eyes. "I'm her sister," she said softly. "She told me about you. She made me promise that if I ever saw you here, I should tell you something." My chest tightened, tears threatening again. "What did she want you to tell me?" The girl smiled through her own tears. She said, "Thank you for loving her the way you did. And she said she'll be with you every time you laugh, every time you choose to live." I broke down right there, in front of a stranger who carried her blood, her eyes, her memory. And somehow, in that moment, I felt like Lily was there. Not gone, not forgotten, just somewhere close, watching. The final goodbye. So here I am, telling this story. Not because I want pity, not because I want to wallow in grief, but because if you've ever loved someone who vanished without explanation, I want you to know you're not alone. Sometimes people leave not because they stop loving you, but because they're carrying battles they don't want you to see. And as much as it hurts, as much as it shatters you, love doesn't end with silence. It doesn't end with ghosting. It doesn't even end with death. It lives on in memories, in laughter, in little sisters with the same eyes. And maybe, just maybe, in the way we choose to keep going, even when it feels impossible. If you felt something listening to this, if it broke your heart, and yet gave you something to hold on to, then stay with me. Subscribe, because there are more stories like this, raw, real, and meant for those of us who feel deeply. Don't leave me in the silence. Let's walk through these stories together.